Hello everyone, we are live, we're here. My channel is slowly turning into a beer commercial. And that is what is happening. And first off, we got a super chat right out the gate from Ilya Moon for $2, says hashtag butthurtfacedough. I'm enjoying that hashtag, that's pretty funny. We've got Nick and Mr. Serious with us. Would you like to introduce yourselves? I'm sure everybody knows who you are, though.
Sure. My name is Nick Suter. Yeah, if we're talking Kyle, I think I've people have encountered me before. I'm a host of In Time with Courtney Stewart, and have my own channel, talk philosophy, logic, a few other things. In Time we do culture. What is it? Breaking news. We've been doing a lot of breaking news. It's been a little busy. If you want to know what's going on with COVID-19 and all that other good stuff, please come on and join us. It's a /In Time show on YouTube, and that's what I spend most of my time doing. Written a couple books too, in case anybody's curious. One of them may come up, I suspect, in this conversation. But at any rate.
And I am Mr. Serious. I'm here playing sidekick to the amazing Nick in Cheshire. And I've been here since, I've been around the community even very heavily since Kyle did what he did. And I'm just kind of here to lend maybe a different opinion.
I'm excited. I hope everybody has their alcohol and or their facepalm protection, as this is a bit of a doozy. There are some problems here, and we're gonna probably try and go over some of these issues. I think that I will give one thing before we even start. Kyle looks a lot better here than he has in the recent past. In a lot of the he's still not quite in the best condition that I've seen him in, like back in Non Sequitur, but he's definitely in better shape in this interview. Like, he just looks like he's feeling a little bit better. Yep, sorry.
Well, no, yeah, we covered him. We covered a lot of this on In Time, and we did mention sort of he did seem to deteriorate there for a little while, and he's looking healthy, which is I think good.
Yep, I personally have no problems with that. That's wonderful, and I'm happy for him. So, shall we get started?
I'm ready.
All right,
yep.
I'm starting at the 14-second mark because there's a little bit of an intro, and it's just like the intro to the show and their little like title screen. I haven't actually skipped anything. So, here we go.
I think this is more for me than you. But thank you so much for coming on.
Sure.
I gotta get some things off my chest, and if you'll indulge me, just give me a couple seconds to just tell everyone why I wanted you to come on the show. I want to tell everyone I want to. I'm a man of honor, and when I feel like I've done wrong, I can't live with myself unless I've rectified it. I prepared some notes here. You don't have to share opinions. You don't have to have the same opinion to remain amicable. You don't have to agree with someone on every issue to at least keep the lines of communications open. You don't have to support someone's decision. If you feel that someone has made a bad decision, you don't have to support it in order to hope for their redemption, or to, again, keep the line of communication open, or to look to care about their well-being. I made a series of horrible blunders in the not so distant past, and this all happened with regard to what happened with you and Steve McRae on the Non Sequitur show.
All right, does anybody have any issues with anything that he said so far?
Nope.
Well, I mean, I know what happens after this. He did say he took notes, so I think that would be important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Where is everybody right now on this?
We are 1 minute and 36 seconds.
Oh, that's exactly where I am. Perfect.
Hey, yeah, I've got timestamps in my little notebook here. I think most people would agree with this sentiment. Like, you don't have to be hostile. You don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to be mean to people. There does come a time where people have crossed the line for you, where you're like, no, there's no reason for me to be amicable with you. We're not friends, and I don't care to be your friend. That doesn't mean you can't have a conversation with somebody, though. Right? But I would like to note the title of this interview. It is called a candid interview, and I do take issue with that, but we'll get there. So we're all on the same page. There's no need to be incredibly hostile towards each other, right?
Yeah, no, that's a good rule of thumb.
Cool.
I agree.
5 C's. Let's go.
First off, I think even small fish like me with 8,000 viewers and big fish like, just pick your biggest, YouTube, R and Raw with a 250,000 viewers. We all, to some level, have some degree of responsibility to others. I hate that word influencer, but to some extent we are an influencer, and that could be good or bad. Our actions are an example to others. I don't think I was a very good example when I resorted to tribalism. I took Steve McRae's side, and if I just stated that, lots of YouTubers did that. We split right down the middle. The entire community split right down the middle. We formed tribes. We didn't even want to listen to the other side. The tribalism and the us versus them mentality, that's only partly what I'm sorry for falling into and becoming a part of. What I'm really wanting to apologize for is the way I came at you, specifically with some really horrible memes that I sat down, thought up, and created and put out there with the sole intention of hurting you and getting a laugh and every other childish fucking reason. And the memes, the shit talking, so unnecessary, so petulant. It is the most juvenile thing. I'm embarrassed with myself for ever doing them. I want to apologize for those. And if a man is not capable of any sort of redemption, there's no reason to live. I don't consider, I'm a warrior. Every job I've ever done in my life has been to protect those who can't protect themselves. Military, law enforcement, corrections, security, everything has been designed to protect the little guy. And in corrections, case in point, you are a felon. You did something very bad. You redeemed yourself in the eyes of the law. You went through the legal system. You paid your price. You paid your debt to society. And I've committed blunders that what you were convicted of it pales in comparison to some of the things that I've done.
Did I mute myself? Am I not muted now?
Yeah, you were muted. I'm sorry, I was still watching. Where did you stop?
Oh.
And
I stopped at 424. Sorry, that was my bad.
Oh, all right.
I stopped at 424. So people in the chat have already started to notice a bit of an issue here. One of them being that I'm sorry, excuse me, split down the middle. Is that what happened? Did the community of non sequitur split down the middle? Do you guys think that was like a pretty even split?
It seems to me that at a minimum 90% of that community, including all of the co-hosts, every single one of them, the ones that were sort of elevated at some point, either during or throughout the process, all said Kyle should pay Steve. So at a minimum, there was universal agreement, and I mean they would go out live and say that on Twitter. So, and that's something he still hasn't done. And it's something he's promised to do and hasn't done. They've all said he should show the books. He hasn't done that. So I think if it seems like if you split the difference between where everybody had agreement, which was that at a minimum he should do that, and regardless of who makes what claims as to ownership or whether or not he was empowered to remove Steve from the channel, everybody agreed on that, and we haven't seen any motion there either. So I'm not sure. I think there was disagreement over whether or not Kyle could do what he did, but I think most people who were familiar with the show would argue that just didn't seem right from the outset. There were some who defended it, but not many, to the best of my knowledge. I could be wrong.
I remember there being like a few fans, but like before a lot of the information got out. So like essentially any time before Steve released the Death of the Non Sequitur show on his channel, where people were probably a little bit more unsure. I wouldn't say that was an even split down the middle, because I think a lot of people just didn't know what was going on yet. And then once people started finding out what was going on, things started to drift probably quite heavily in to one side of this situation.
Well, I mean, ever since the beginning, ever since the information started coming out, it was Kyle saying things and not following through on any of it, and then Steve saying things and then backing it up with information. And then that just kept happening on both sides the whole entire time.
Yeah, so...
Well,
Oh, go
I'd
ahead.
like to point out one other thing, which is Non Sequitur has lost about 20% of its subs, and that's huge for any channel, but considering that a large number of the ones that are left are kind of dead subs, those were the highest, those were the most important subs that they lost. Those were the regular viewers that they lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, 20% of that. That doesn't strike me as a community that is split 50-50. I could be wrong, but I have a hard time thinking that that's if you lose 20% because of one action and you don't get them back, 6 months, 8 months later, I don't think the community is as split as it would appear. I agree that there's reasonably the same number of vocal people on either side, but that doesn't mean that the sides are equivalent in terms of overall agreement. And again, most of the co-hosts seem to agree with Steve on a great deal of his central premises.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I would also like to point out that this to me is irresponsible, in that even if this is just hyperbole, like they're just trying to cater to Kyle a little bit to get him to open up, this amount of hyperbole here, this exaggeration, to me, as he was just saying that we should be responsible in the information and the fact that we have platforms that, whether we're influencers or however you wanted to phrase it, that you should be responsible for the information you're putting out and responsible for how you carry yourself. I think we'll touch on that, though, a little bit more as we go.
I did want to hit on one other thing, though, which was he was talking about the memes, and I do think there were a lot of really cute memes that came out. I'm curious to know which ones were his, but I do think, you know what, I think I'm of two minds of this. I'm not sure that he should be as sorry about it as he is, only because I think a lot of it was venting. There was a lot of people in the community that were very, very upset by this, and the memes were a good way of venting. It does hurt people. I am not a fan of hurting Kyle, really, for any reason. I'm a fan of getting what's right done, but I'm not a fan of giving people a hard time just for the sake of it. But there is such a thing as catharsis and venting. And if he's after the fact, if he's saying, I shouldn't have done that, you know what, kudos and good for him for apologizing to Kyle. But I also don't think it's so huge that he should really feel immensely guilty about it. But I think it's good that he's if he wants to reverse that he's on.
I kind of started the meme train on that purposefully, and I do believe I explained on air specifically why I started that meme train, and the reason why was not to hurt Kyle. It was to get his attention. It was to get his attention to show him that people were not happy with him, as well as to spread the information about what was going on. Memes are a very good way to spread snippets of information. They're not a good source of information, but there is that's a very good way to get information out to people, to get people talking, to get the information flowing, and to get someone's attention, to be like, because keep in mind that the memes happened around the time when Kyle was still had the opportunity to do anything, because that was before the court case started. Kyle at that point still had the opportunity to fix his mistake, to take a lot of what was happening back. That opportunity when those memes were happening were still there. If you were to be like, because nobody's really making memes about this anymore, and the reason nobody's making any memes about this anymore is because that was hurting Kyle was never actually the goal. It being hurtful towards Kyle at the time, or even looking back on it and saying, you know what, that might have hurt his feelings. Sure, yeah. However, that wasn't the intent of most people, I don't think.
I think that's a fair observation, but as you know, I think that's an important observation.
There's no problem. Yeah. You feel like you want to apologize to Kyle. You feel like you did him wrong, and if you were malicious in your usage of these memes and what your goals were with them, yeah, sure, apologize. I don't see an issue with that.
Well, and even if you weren't, sometimes it's just if you did something that hurts somebody, whether you meant to or not. I think it's worth. I think kudos
Sure.
for him for doing it, but
Yeah,
I also
I
think
agree
he
with that.
shouldn't be overly harsh on himself. Everybody was, people were trying to send messages, people were trying to talk, and it does
Yeah,
happen. So
I am
I think
curious about this tribalism stuff, though. He does mention that he was being tribalistic, and my question to him then is: was he just going along with whatever Steve was saying or what other people were doing, or because that's not what I was doing. That's not what I think the majority of people were doing. I think the majority of people were upset by what was happening and what Kyle was doing, and they were voicing that opinion, which Kyle asked for, if you recall. Kyle's the one who asked for this to be made public. Kyle's the one who said, I want the court of public opinion. Right? So I'm curious to see, well, how much information did Jim actually have when he started making the memes, and also how much information did Jim have going into this interview? Because that tribalism bit, it's questionable to me. I'm not sure how what he was doing was tribalistic. Like, in what way does he mean that? And that would be a question I would love to ask him at some point if he is willing to come and talk to me about this.
And also, the memes...
Which I have opened, I have left an open invitation for him, by the way, if anybody's questioning. Go ahead.
Right, he can come in here anytime. But the memes, they didn't... That wasn't, like, the first step. There was a video that Kyle did on the Nonsec channel, like, right after what happened. And I remember sitting in there, and you could cut the tension with a knife. If anybody created a tribe, it was Kyle against himself in that stream that he did. I didn't follow Steve because of anything about Steve. The only reason why I sided with, I guess, Steve is because he was the victim of absolute nonsense. And I mean, I don't know how you could put it any other way. We tried to talk to Kyle. He was not having it. He was living in a delusion that everything was still going okay. And when everybody started getting banned, the memes were kind of like a last case scenario kind of thing.
Well, and let me suggest, I do think there was tribalism on both sides. I think there was absolutely tribalism on both sides. But just because there's been tribalism doesn't mean that one side can't be completely 100% right and the other side completely 100% wrong. And we're all guilty of tribalism at some points. We all hopefully try to avoid that. So if he's trying to avoid that, I think that's great. But you can be tribalistic and end up on the right side anyway, or tribalistic and be on the wrong side. It cuts a lot of ways. I think just because there has been, it doesn't mean one side isn't right. I think there is clearly a right and a wrong here, regardless of whether or not you avoid tribalism.
Yeah, just like
mean...
you're just saying factually. So I think there's a difference. I'm gonna give Jim the benefit of the doubt here, and I'm gonna say he's talking about his own experience in the way he feels that he was acting, despite the facts one way or another. He's like, I was acting tribalistic. I wasn't actually making, even though the facts are on Steve's side, I wasn't acting that way. I was acting just with the group. I wasn't actually just acting as my own agent.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going. We are at 4 minutes and 24 seconds.
We all stand guilty of something, and I think if we don't have a path to redemption, I'm rambling. I should have actually written this down. Do you understand what I'm saying so far, Kyle?
Totally.
Okay.
I 100%.
I feel like I need to do this. I need to set myself on a path of redemption. If it's not possible, I don't feel that it's worth that. I don't have any worth in life. And later on, just so you know, I'm going to, although you are on the show, although I want to keep the lines of communication open, I still, we don't even have to talk about the actual ins and outs of the situation because I know the actual legal is still ongoing. But I have a couple questions for you. If you don't want to answer them, I will give you my opinion of what I think should be done at this point going forward. But what this really is I want to find a way to seek redemption. I want to find a way for you to seek redemption. And most importantly, all this cannot be easy on your mental well-being. So I want to make sure that you're in a good place.
I think that's amicable. I paused. We're at 5 minutes and 43 seconds.
I'm up to 7:25. Okay, somehow I'm all right.
Oh, are you watching at ×2 speed?
Oh yes, I am. I thought.
I'm at
everyone was.
Sorry, I'm at 1.5.
Oh, all right. That would do it.
Do you want me to adjust to 1.75? I'm fine with that. I don't want to go to 2 just because I want it to be easy enough for outside as well.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
All right, I will make that adjustment. I'm gonna ignore that. We know that Kyle is something that he said just before this next set. He said that he's a lawyer. So I don't know what kind of lawyer Jim is. I also don't know like where he's based out of. I don't know if he's currently an active lawyer or if he is retired, or I don't know. However, there are some things later on that are just factually incorrect about the court case, which makes me kind of question how did you do this, but also that he said he did things that are just as bad as Kyle, if not worse. So you're a lawyer admitting on camera that you committed crimes in the past? So I don't think that necessarily we should speculate, but I think that's because I'm also talking to Jim a little bit here, if he does decide to come on. I have questions about that. Again, Kyle is already a convicted felon who has done his time, and he was able to come on to Non Sequitur and live a life after the fact without really any issues until he fucked up again. But he's also currently in court and has already been shown to have committed fraud again. So I want to know if whatever Jim is saying here applies to what Kyle is currently doing, or if it's only applying to what Kyle did in the past.
It looks like he's in the chat.
Well, let me say, I mean, a number of people, I don't know. It sounded like he said that he was a lawyer. I'm not sure what he was. He was also speaking quickly, but I was also playing at 2.5.
Yeah, perhaps speed, so. I misunderstood.
But I will say, I mean, there's a number of people who become lawyers after having done, things that they shouldn't have.
Right.
There's a difference between doing it before being a lawyer and doing it after being a lawyer. But if he's in the chat, I think that's great.
Yeah. So I'm interested in seeing that he says that he wants to seek redemption for some memes. So this interview is his way of seeking that redemption because of his tribalistic behavior and his malicious, self-admitted malicious memery, is how I'm going to phrase it. So moving forward, and that he wants to be responsible and amicable with people. So I just want to keep that in mind as we move forward in this interview and see if the punishment, the crime justifies the punishment that he is taking during this interview, and we'll see if he maintains his being responsible as well as trying to be amicable to everybody involved. Make sense? All right, let's go. We're at 5 minutes and 43 seconds, and we're going a little bit faster. We turn the speed up.
Yes, I am in a good place now. And let me start off by saying that you, in the grand scheme of things, there's no need to seek redemption in terms of what happened with this, in my opinion, because
I agree with Kyle.
I don't hold any grudges. I understand that when people do YouTube, there's no manual for it. There's no there's nobody teaches you how that you're supposed to respond in certain situations, and a lot of times you're responding either off the cuff or in my case, where you're in a fit of rage, and you have the constant thought that there are so many people that are watching every move that you make. Some waiting on you to make that one mistake that they can sort of capitalize on and go from there. So I understand in a pragmatic sense and just in tune with reality that when something like what happened with the Non Sequitur happens, by default, most people are going to take a side. Most people are going to sort of fold in with, either the people that they've known the longest, the people they've been, the closest to. I understand all that. I'm not in any way delusional enough to think that, I'm right in this situation. Therefore, everybody should side with me, and everybody who doesn't is just an idiot and, deserves no kind of talking to. I've talked with several people that take my side, quote unquote. I've talked with people who take Steve's side. We have Discord conversations from time to time, and I don't begrudge any of them. In fact, I've told them numerous times that I completely understand them taking that side, because when that happened, there was only one side of the story being put out there. I made it a point to sort of lay low because things were getting kind of, it was just becoming a lot and overwhelming. And
let me know if you guys need me to pause for you guys also. So I'm at 7 minutes and 59. I'm at the 8 minute mark. Do you guys want to jump in on anything Kyle said so far?
He said that there was only one side of the story being put out, and that is, I tried. I gave him every benefit of the doubt to say something. I really wanted to believe that he was being honest. I'm a sucker for that, and he kept failing me. I I sucked up every bit of his side of the story, every bit of that I could, and it still came out lacking.
I have obviously a number of very strong objections to things Kyle has done, but I will say this: it seems to me that what he's saying here, he does seem to live by and go by. I was on not his most recent Discord appearance in the non sequitur Discord. I did leave that Discord, and I kind of regret it because there have been times I wanted to go back in. It was immensely hostile, but I was there for one of his last appearances, and he was very good. You know, he asked me some questions, and it was actually a reasonably friendly engagement, despite the fact that I've been rather vocal against him. So I do think he is practicing what he preaches here, and that has been my experience. You know. I think we're getting into territory where he maybe is using that charity as a sort of a cudgel, because I think he is we, on In Time we have covered this, and we've covered this really quite extensively, and we did the absolute maximum charity we possibly could, and by about the third or fourth time we really did a serious update, we reached the conclusion there was no way to reach any other conclusion than he had been deliberately lying to basically everybody about some pretty serious stuff for a very, very long time. And I think that the charity that he provides here is certainly much appreciated. I think in general it's a nice and good thing, but on the flip side, I don't think it should detract from the fact that I see a considerable amount of evidence that he really did some really rather shady things here, and did so quite deliberately.
Well, can we also point out that there wasn't only one side? That Death of Non Sequitur video was unedited. That was Kyle's stance. That is what Kyle said. There was no editing going on there. There was no miscommunication about that was. That was a full unedited conversation and hangout with Kyle. Kyle's the one who asked for public opinion. Kyle's the one who said, so sue me. Kyle's the one who showed his hand in that interview and told them to go public with it. Kyle said his piece, then refused to answer anybody when they asked for clarification. That is not the same as one side is putting out all of this information and this story and I'm just not saying anything. That's not the same thing. That's a misrepresentation of what had happened. And this is where I agree. Charity is great. Getting Kyle to come on and maybe have a conversation with you and treating him in an amicable manner is not an excuse to let him say whatever he wants and misrepresent and twist situations like he just did.
Yeah, when you do that, it's just basically giving him another soapbox to continue doing what he has been doing. You got to hold people to. I mean, if you want to actually give somebody an interview and you actually want, some factual information to come out, you actually have to hold people to account.
Yes. All right, so let's keep going. We are at 8 minutes, and go.
I always thought I had thick skin, and I still think I do to a certain extent. But again, going back to you're not really prepared for some of the things that go on. Like I wasn't prepared for the sort of onslaught of continuous messages.
Yeah, because he thought he was gonna win.
The reaction that took place, it kind of jarred me a little bit, and so I had to step away for just my own. I just knew that I needed to step out and take care of what I needed to take care of. And luckily I did that, and I'm a nice way to play it. I thought I thought a couple of your memes were funny. I can laugh at those. Kyle's Lawyer on Twitter was a hilarious Twitter account. There are some things, Jim, that aren't like, it didn't create a rift between you and I. We had an exchange on Twitter one time when that was the height of my aggravation and all of this, and just sort of let it go. I didn't care about going on any campaign to be like Jim is an asshole, because I know you're not. People just in the YouTube world get caught up a lot in the things that go on because of the either the clicks that they have or the friends that they have. It's human nature, and so I don't fault you or anyone else that sort of went with that, because even I can sit back and say that looking at it, because I wasn't coming out and responding to each individual thing that was put out there, that narrative was put out, and it looked like that was the one that was a better to go with, because the other side wasn't talking and sort of seeming like they were dodging any sort of confrontation on this. So in my opinion, I have no ill will towards you, no ill thoughts. I still thought one of the most fun things that I've done on YouTube was that night that we filmed with Shannon out at the steakhouse.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was, I think back to that fondly often.
Yeah.
The fuck out. I'm gonna urge the rest of my hosts of this show. That's all really. That's the only sphere of influence that I want to be responsible for. And from here on out, I'm a big believer in the American justice system. The legal system here in the United States is the worst on earth, but it's better than every other legal system on earth. I've got to have quote unquote faith in that system and let it do its job. Commenting on it from a peanut gallery and all the 50 million armchair quarterbacks. It's irrelevant, but it can grate on you. You did mention the constant scrutiny. I consider it life in a fishbowl. Sometimes it feels like life in a fishbowl. I just called the police 2 nights ago. Right now they're still scared. They went on. If I could just butt in real quick.
Sure.
Just now you said constant scrutiny, and see that's where it can't be hard. It can't be easy on you mentally right now. It can't be easy on Steve mentally. It can't be easy on anyone that's involved. And really, the only 2 people that are involved are you 2. Everyone else I'm not saying they need to stay the fuck out because they are free to do whatever they want. They moved up their vacation, spring break vacation to the Ozarks. So my wife and 2 kids are gone. They left early because of this. 2 nights ago, it had to be 2 people because 2 different windows were being pounded on at the same time.
Did I mute myself again? All right, I paused at 12 minutes. 12 minutes, 10 seconds. Oh. I keep pausing. I keep muting myself when I go to talk. And then I'm not unmuting myself. I'm sorry, that's my fault. So 12 minutes, 10 seconds. I have a couple of issues with this that other people are getting involved. The entirety of the Non Sequitur fan base is involved. Anybody who dedicated any time to that show, ever shared a link, ever donated any money, was part of the Patreon, ever donated any kind of time or effort, or people who did music, people who helped up with graphics, people who did this, that, and the other thing, all of those people were frauded. Every single one of them, and every single one of the fans of that show have a right to have their voices heard. And we made that clear Steve and I both made that clear from the very, very beginning. One of the main reasons why we went to go look at the deleted comments was because Kyle was deleting completely fair criticism from the fans of the show whose opinion he asked for. This is an incredibly irresponsible way to handle everything that Kyle just said. Not only did you mishandle what Kyle just said, but you've also mishandled the way you've responded to it, because you've opened 1, 2, 3 doors for Kyle to be able to say whatever the hell he wants and misrepresent it in any way possible.
And also, it really disregards all of the other people that Kyle stepped on along the way. I mean, I was one of them. I mean, I have no less of a right to be involved in this as I would say even Steve. I feel attacked in a different way, but that doesn't mean I'm not involved somehow. You can't just throw us all out because we're not part of the legal system. Fuck that.
I do think there has been a number of people who have been involving themselves and instigating, in many cases just for the sake of instigating. So I do think the sentiment of staying out is a reasonably noble one. However, I also concur. I was a patron. I put money to the show, and that money was supposed to go to Kyle. It really was. It was also supposed to go to Steve. It really was. And it was actually also supposed to go to Boole. It was supposed to go to a lot of people, and when I gave it, I was really very much under the impression that that's where it was going. Now, if that's because I was being an idiot, making assumptions that I shouldn't have been making, then that's one thing. I don't think that's why it was. If you take a look at the Non Sequitur merchandise, there's only one person who's on every single piece of the Non Sequitur merchandise, and it's not Kyle.
Ooh.
And that doesn't mean that I wasn't giving the money to Steve. I really wasn't. And Kyle deserves some of that Patreon, but he's not the only one who deserves it. And I believe I probably don't have a legal right to know what happened with it. I probably don't. I don't think Patreon gives me those rights.
It's an
but I believe, I believe morally I have a right. And I think people who want to stay out of it, I'm thrilled, because I think the whole situation would be better in general if more people stayed out of it. But I don't think that means that there aren't people who have a right to involve themselves. And for the most part, to some extent, I include myself in that. I maybe involve myself a bit more.
Please remember, Kyle's the one who asked for the court of public opinion. He's the one who asked these people to get involved. He just banked on the fact that he thought that people were going to side with him and not Steve. Because he fucked that up, him recanting that now because, oh, well, you know, it's only really between me and Steve, is a cop-out. It's a straight-up cop-out. And my issue here isn't that Kyle's saying that. Of course Kyle's saying that. It's Kyle. We all know Kyle's full of shit. But the fact that you're doing an interview and you don't mention any of these points or any of these people and are in fact agreeing with Kyle that these people should not be involved when Kyle's the one who asked these people to get involved in the first place is, to me, irresponsible.
And by the way, Kyle, there was a secret Amazon wish list that nobody knew about that was for people who wanted to donate to the show. All of those items went exclusively to Kyle. Steve didn't know it was there. Boole didn't know it was there. Dave McGinnis didn't know it was there. Nobody else knew it was there except for Kyle. It was on behalf of the show, but it was going straight to him. I think anybody who was involved with the show has a right to know that that was happening. I think anyone who donated has a right to know what happened. So I do think I think there are people who are involved who have a right to know. I think most people, and even again, sometimes myself included, are involving themselves maybe more than they should, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't involve ourselves at least somewhat.
Yep, I think that's fair, and I think it's irresponsible to be going along with what Kyle is saying here. I also have one other question for Jim at some point if he ever comes on. I think this is going to be a separate question entirely for a different discussion, but he just said that the American legal system is the best legal system ever, essentially, like in the world. That would be an interesting discussion, in my opinion.
Actually, I think he was quoting, and I forget who, and it's often misquoted, and I've forgotten who the correct quote is. It's not... it gets misattributed all the time, but the quote is, the American legal system is the worst legal system in the world with the exception of every other one. It's a clever, it's a common one. It's a good quote. It's often attributed to Winston Churchill, who was actually saying it, of course, about the British system, but at any rate, actually was saying about democracy. But yeah, it's a good quote. I like it.
Oh, okay. I actually didn't know he was quoting that, so kudos. If that's not your actual opinion, I'm sure you'll let people know. Anyway, moving on. So we are at 12 minutes and 10 seconds. Off we go.
And it wasn't just knocking on a window to like, hey, Jim, it's an old friend, come around to the front door. It was pounding on the windows, almost to the point of breaking them, like to send a message. I went to the window. Of course, I'm locked and loaded. I look out the people, and someone's got their hand over the people. Then I kind of freaked out. And I called my next door neighbor, who's a local, works for a local PD. He came out, his whole tactical thing, which, seeing him work, I realized how perishable of a skill tactical training is, because I tried to go out there and cover him. And it had been a decade since I've been in a hostile combat zone. And in my head, I was thinking, I still have all those skills ready at my fingertips, and how perishable of a skill they are, because I felt like a fumbling fool out there. I would have gotten us all killed if they were still out there. But anyway, he and I did a sweep around the neighborhood. Then we called his friends at the local PD, and they patrolled the neighborhood all night. We got some good tips. Someone had the doorbell with the 2 doors down. They recorded
ring cam.
It's like a ring, yeah. So they showed on the phone. They had it recorded. So we have some suspects. I assume I've got 2 credible threats so far in 3 years of doing the show, and they're all related to my criticism of Islam. Anyway.
Oh wow.
Life in a fishbowl. It scared the shit out of my family. I understand that it's very nerve-wracking. The armchair quarterbacks, like everyone on Earth right now except you and Steve, I would hope that we can all. I'm only gonna.
14 minutes, pausing. If anybody didn't catch it, what Jim just did there was he just compared, like, he just went on a diatribe about a credible threat that he had against his family, and it was kind of hard to catch because there was a weird cut in there, which is my first issue with, this isn't candid. If you're cutting out things and cutting out information, that's not what candid is. But he goes on this diatribe about his family being under a credible threat due to somebody coming to his house and essentially threatening his family. But he's comparing that and likening it to Kyle having to take criticism on the internet without any real credible threats. Nobody's been going to Kyle's house. Nobody's been trying to hunt Kyle down as far as I'm aware. And Steve hasn't been sending anybody to do so, that's for sure. So if anybody is doing this, it's completely outside of what anybody on the internet that is a part of, like, the creators have been even suggesting to do. So to make this comparison, in my opinion, is not just irresponsible, it's dishonest. That's not a reasonable comparison to make. This is at best a logical fallacy. This is a false equivalence. It's not getting memes made about you and having people ask you questions and continuously ask you questions every time you go live on a channel you stole about stealing the channel is not the same as people showing up at your house and threatening your family. This is not, and keep in mind, Kyle asked for the court of public opinion. This wasn't thrust upon him by accident.
I think you're right in as much as I think I mean, I use hyperbole all the time. That's why I'm stuck putting on a $400 suit every broadcast. You know, we all use hyperbole. And sometimes it's good for making the point. I think he's correct in concept. I think he's off by an order of magnitude. I'll agree on the example. It doesn't necessarily trouble me any. Obviously, if you know, a number of us, there are people who question Islam publicly, and that can get you into trouble in a way that is different. But nonetheless, I think I'm not as bothered by this. I understand the point. You're right. He's off by an order of magnitude, but you know what? Everybody on YouTube catches stuff and catches hell, and you know I applaud any attempt to try to.
Yeah, I think there's an issue that. when you compare, oh, I caught some hell because I stole thousands and tens of thousands of dollars, frauded fans, and took a channel, and am currently still doing this and holding the channel hostage, versus I spoke out about, I was actively speaking out against Islam and I got attacked for it. These are not even remotely comparable to me.
Well, I think that's a good point. I will say, I think criticism of Islam is actually a moral obligation. I don't think it's easy to do, and I think there are people who probably shouldn't because of various reasons. But for the most part, it's a moral obligation. I do think complying with court orders are also a moral obligation. And in this example, one person was doing a very moral thing in you know, being critical of a not necessarily Islam, but let's say the extremist, you know, versions of it. I think that's a brave and moral thing. And the other one is actually in violation of a court order and has been causing a great deal of trouble. So I think that's a very fair point. That's a good point.
My hope is that maybe this happened real recently to Jim, and he just had it on his mind, and he really just wanted to talk about it. That I hope that's what it was. I hope he actually wasn't trying to, you know, make a comparison here. That's me, you know, silver lining this.
This is what makes me concerned that this is not actually an interview, because this has, like, you're justifying Kyle's feelings that he hasn't said that he has. Right, so Kyle hasn't said that, oh, I'm stressed out because so many people were messaging me, and Kyle didn't say, you didn't ask him about his mental state at this point. What he did was say that, oh, well, you know, people are always going to look for something on the internet to criticize you for. Kyle, you stole from people. This isn't like, people go after Steve all of the time for shit. All of the time for things that he has not done. He's got groups of people who actually stalk him around the internet, people who could theoretically be credible threats towards him. Nobody's threatening Kyle. The people who are threatening Kyle is the court system. This is not the same thing. But comparing it to life in a fishbowl, Jim isn't getting attacked from what he's said here. He's not getting attacked because he did something unreasonable. He's not getting that's not fishbowl life. Fishbowl life is that people are scrutinizing every single thing you do. That's not what people attacking you at your house for criticizing Islam is. That's not the same thing.
Another to go a little further on that, and I guess there are a few things that are at this point cannot be refuted. Kyle lost, and people sit there and say, well, he lost by default. Well, that was his choice, and a lot of times the reason people lose by default is because they don't bother showing up because they know they're going to lose anyway. That he lost by default doesn't mitigate the fact that the finding has been a judgment against him. The other thing is, he has then agreed to comply with at least elements of that judgment and then violated them. Now, if he wants to sit there and say, well, I'm going to try to get it thrown out for this reason or that reason, I'm going to try to, he can do all that. He has lied to the court. That is irrefutable. He has lied to the court. He has said he has turned over information he has not turned over. The information that he's turned over has in fact been, he said, well, I turned over usernames and passwords. They were all wrong. They weren't the correct usernames and passwords. And I would give the guy charity if he hadn't lied to a lot of people about doing stuff up through this point, including admitting to the fact that he's been lying for 8 months about having a lawyer. He has admitted that. He has gone publicly and said, I have a lawyer. I've talked to the lawyer. The lawyer's telling me all this great advice about Steve. None of it was true. So we know for a fact he's lied about a great many things, and he has lied to the court as well. So I do think we need to remember that whenever having a discussion with him.
Right. Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. We're at 14 minutes at 1.75 speed, and here we go.
Speak for myself. I'm going to, from here on out, temper any criticism I have. One of our show has 21 commandments. Over time, that we just add commandments, things that are little mottos to live by, right? I forget which number it is, but one is, do not perpetuate drama. And I am guilty of the biggest blunder of all time. Not only did I perpetuate drama, I think I actively took part in fucking your head up a little bit and making your life more
It's number 7, by the way.
If you screwed up,
it's
which,
commandment
right
number
now,
7.
If you ask me, I think you screwed up by the original action with the Non Sequitur show. What I did to let you know you screwed up was the worst possible way I could have done it. What I should have done is take you aside, and because this was after that faithless forum. So not only did I jeopardize my relationship with you, but I ruined friendships with other people that saw how I treated you, and now they will probably never talk to me again. Jimmy Snow, Mr. Atheist, Shannon, that night, that was a beautiful night that we had. You guys, that was by hands down the funniest and most enjoyable episode we've ever done in 3 years, you and Shannon that night. That's never going to be repeated. She and Jimmy will probably never talk to me again. So I have a lot of atoning for.
Well,
Pause. 15 minutes, 35 seconds. Okay. Number 7 is the commandment he's talking about, by the way. If you're interested in looking at the commandments, it is number 7, thou shalt not perpetuate drama. Jim, you're perpetuating drama. Jim, and you're perpetuating drama not because you had Kyle on. You're perpetuating drama not because you had a conversation with Kyle. You're perpetuating drama because you're trying to be friends with Jimmy and Shannon again, as you just said, by having Kyle on. You just said you were doing this. You don't question, you don't push back, Kyle has said things that are factually incorrect. We know that they are factually not true. And you're letting him do it. With no pushback, that is drama. That's what drama is. Falsifying narrative and pushing bullshit for whatever reason. It doesn't have to be views. People seem to think that, well, I'm not really doing this for views, so it's not drama. No. It doesn't have to be about views. It could be for whatever selfish reason you think. Or it can be for altruistic reasons if you think. Drama is pushing bullshit without giving any pushback. This video is drama because it's not a proper interview. If it was a proper interview, it wouldn't be drama.
Yeah, on top of that, I mean, how many sentences have we heard Kyle speak in the first, 15 minutes? Like maybe 2? He's been basically trying to elevate Kyle this entire time. Like, what is this? Like, this is not an interview.
Not too long ago, there are very few people that in my view, I will not engage with. Very few. Excuse me. There's a few, not many. One of them, I accidentally doxed. It was an accident. It was actually only to a very small number of people. It didn't go out to a huge number of people, but it happened. I apologized. I apologized publicly. I apologized profusely to a number of people, and I owe the guy an apology, despite the fact I think he's a horrible, horrible human being, one of the worst I've met in quite some time. I don't like the guy. The apology is still out there, and it's going to stand. It seems to me that what he's doing here is he really just wants to apologize, and he wants to say, right, or whether you're right or wrong, this is how I feel, and I'm sorry. I felt I wronged you. I do think that I think those are his motivations, and I think that's spectacular, and I think we need more of that in general. He's owning up to it. I do think that doesn't strike me as necessarily an interview. I think that the title of this and what his intent is are two different beasts. Be that as it may, I applaud what I think he's intending to do, but I don't see this being an interview either necessarily.
Well, I also have another issue. He said he did he's apologizing for something he did rather than contact Kyle. And I wonder, Jim, did you have contact with Kyle around this time? Because I mean, for everybody I knew couldn't contact him. He wasn't replying to anything. Everybody was asking him questions all the time, and he wouldn't reply to anybody. But did you have contact with him? Because if you did, that'd be a shocker to me.
I think there's also something to be said for, you can apologize to somebody without making it public. And if I'm reading this correctly, and you are more than welcome to correct me if I am wrong, Jim, since you're in the chat, I am reading this as your apologies don't need to be public. However, what you're doing here is more than an apology. You're trying to make amends. You're trying to get some kind of sense of redemption for the way, and this is the way you're trying to do it. For memes. So, the question is, why did you make it public if you were just trying to apologize? The answer is you're not. You're trying to make amends. You're trying to seek some kind of redemption. However, what does that look like? What does that mean to you? Because you're in a situation where you have now allowed Kyle to do further damage to the show that you apparently care so much about, and to someone who you claim is your friend. Jim straight up says that he is friends with Steve. What I think happened here, and this is giving the most benefit of the doubt as I possibly can give, this is assuming assuming Jim's intentions are good, assuming Jim is trying to do right by Kyle, right by himself, and just like try to amend bridges between Jimmy and Shannon, which he just said that he is trying to do. You can't... Doing something like this publicly without giving any pushbacks is damaging to the people you already have bridges with. What I think happened is that you were so concerned that you were friends with Steve, and you were so concerned that your bias for Steve was going to come through, that you actually accidentally ended up pushing your bias instead of going neutral, you went too far. Not intentionally, but you went too far, and you are incredibly biased to Kyle through this entire thing.
I laugh only because I know somebody on this panel who's done that on a couple of occasions. He shall remain nameless.
I'm sorry.
It wasn't you.
Look, do you see what that was? That was an apology. You know what didn't happen? Any ball licking. He just said sorry.
Well, I mean, like I said, I think his intentions are very good. I do think it's difficult. I don't know what I think,
but I'm willing to assume. I'm willing to make the assumption that, grant the charity that I think that Jim's intentions were good. I think his execution is garbage.
I'd mentioned this story earlier, and I'm going to mention it again. I wrote a book that was actually the memoir of a prison psychologist. He did 10 years at Walpole Supermax. A psychologist of the worst human beings you can imagine. And I interviewed a few of them for it. And the one that sticks out with me was a guy who was one of the most charming, nicest guys you've ever met. And he was really sweet, and he knew how to just get into people and just talk to them and just really connect with people. And one of the most charming human beings I've ever met. According to the government, the prosecutor, he's murdered 14 people. He says it's well over that, and he got busted after he had killed a 2-year-old. quite deliberately. I mean, it was premeditated. There was no doubt. One of the nicest human beings I've ever met, and I gotta tell you, I still, so I've met genuine psychopaths who are just some of the most. Now that's not Kyle. So let me try not to be guilty of what we were this order of magnitude problem. But I will say this: I know for a fact, that Kyle is guilty of at least 90% of what he's been accused of in this regard, and guilty of it premeditated. And I want to like him, and I have a very hard time associating how much I actually really do like the guy and want to keep liking him with what I know that he's really done. And then the worst of it is lying to his best friends, lying to the other co-hosts of the show, lying to his patrons and saying, I have a lawyer, this is getting taken care of. That's almost worse. That I can understand actually stealing the money. To some extent, I can understand that, because you just use it up, and you use a little, and then a little more, and then a little before you know it's gone.
It's easy to happen accidentally,
Yeah, but the lying is, and then being able to just be such a sweetheart and such a nice guy. Boy, do I want to like him. So I don't begrudge anybody who likes him, and I don't begrudge anybody who, how many people choose to get a degree in hospitality? That's what he chose. He knows how to be charming. He knows how to be nice, and he wanted to learn this, and he's good at it. I'm sorry, what?
It's calculated.
Well, calculated. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much. So you just have to be very, very careful with him and realize that, for the most part, it's been my experience. Anything he says, you can't tell whether it's true or not. There's no way to know.
My concern here is what Jim was just saying is tribalism. He's trying to make amends so he can be friends with these other people, whether they're right or wrong. Why? Why are you concerned? You are so concerned about whether Jimmy and Shannon talk to you again for some reason. Why is that? Because they're good people despite their actions? Or are you willing to sacrifice the actions just so you can hold hands and sing Kumbaya with them, whether or not they have been held responsible or rectified the shit that they have done to the Non Sequitur fans? Not even Steve. Take Steve out of the equation pretty easily. We got 2 super shots. We got one from Failed at Engineering for 2 that says, does Atheist Edge want to come on? He requested to come on if we were going to do a response, and then he has not gotten back to me and came in here saying he didn't want to come in because it was hostile. And then I do not know how to pronounce your name, and I apologize. It is Arne, and it's for 100 knock that says, I listened to Jim/Kyle the other day, and I almost cursed several times, smiley face. I can't do it again. I'm out. You demand Chesh. Thanks. This is the 3rd time I've listened to it, if it makes you feel any better.
Let me take a stab at it. Arne Rorvik. That's going to be my guess. So
hopefully that is correct, and if it's not, please type it in phonetically and see how we do. I would also like to point out that up till this point, Kyle has been speaking as if he has no responsibility for the situation that he is in and for the situation with Non Sequitur, and that just slides through this entire interview, and I think that is also a little bit irresponsible. So, shall we continue? We are at 15:35, and go!
I mean, you led the message that you sent me about having this conversation with, you're probably not going to agree to do this. And, I said right away that I would. I think that, just being completely honest and candid, I think that there comes a certain point. I've learned this with being away from YouTube. YouTube is great. It's a great medium to interact with people. You meet a lot of good people, a lot of great people, a lot of people with amazing ideas and talent and ways to make you think that you didn't have before. But if you let it, it can completely cause people to, anybody, even myself, to do make decisions they normally wouldn't have, behave in a way that they normally wouldn't have. And in a situation like this, I think that it's to the point where we have to just let it go in a way and move on. With what happened, even if you take the stance that I made a poor decision in how that the Non Sequitur show ended, it was still a decision that was made. One that, in certain aspects, I may agree. I can say now that there are many instances of how I wish I would have handled the situation differently. How I wouldn't have changed the conclusion because in my mind and what I was dealing with, that separation needed to happen. I didn't do it in the best way. I didn't do it in the most professional way. I wish that I could go back and have a do-over, but I can't. And I have to be able to say that I'm human and, I fuck up quite often. And, one day maybe on YouTube, one day maybe on this, one day maybe on that. But when that happens, I try my best to be able to be, big enough to admit that I did make that mistake and that I wish I could have not handled it the way that I did. I can't go back and fix the things that I want to fix. That's done. So people are in my mind, the scenario of, okay, that happened. It kind of sucked the way it happened, but are we going to continue to have this be a focal point 2 years later, 1 year later, 2 years later, and not say, well, Kyle fucked up, Steve fucked up. It didn't end in the best of light, but hey, that's life. Shit happens. Things like that go south, and bands break up, couples break up, show partners break up, and everybody in the situation wishes that it didn't happen that way, especially for the people involved and the really big fans of the show. Yep. And it sucks. It's just not an outcome that anybody foresaw, but it doesn't take away from it. Like a band, I say this all the time. It's like when a band breaks up, like Pink Floyd. When they broke up, yeah, it was shocking. It sucked. It was people either want to go with Roger Waters or David Gilmour, but it doesn't take away from the music that they made. Like you can still listen to a Pink Floyd song. You can still listen to Comfortably Numb and take something away from it. Take what they meant to put across away from it. And the most unfortunate thing in all of this, it's not so much what I was dealing with in terms of people trying to contact me or the legal thing. It's the fact that I can't speak for Steve, but myself, I had like a vision for what I wanted that show to kind of come across. And you put a lot of your heart and soul into a project like that. It becomes, because it was an everyday thing, every night streaming, and it becomes an extension of yourself. And the really sad thing about all this is that in the mire of the drama that's unfolded since the split, the focus is taken away on what the main purpose of the channel was really sort of set for. The tone of it, the memory, it's just tainted. It's a thing where it's like you're going to remember more so the battle that ensued after Non Sequitur ended, rather than the nights of us trying to get to big points, having big conversations with important people in whatever fields. And that to me is the most heartbreaking thing out of the whole thing. I just hate to see that happen. But again,
it was heartbreaking. That's exactly right.
All right, we're at paused at the 21. Who has something to say about that? Because that sounds like Kyle complaining that people are going to remember him as a thief.
I'd like to start, I guess. Something that I heard kind of close to the beginning of that was he was trying to say, oh, I made mistakes, Steve made mistakes. Like, somehow we're on some kind of even playing field here. Like, it's just something that happens, whoops, I stole all the money, and I took over the show, and I stole things, whoops, it just happens.
Minimizing
and,
it.
Yeah, big time. And that is absolutely disingenuous. And I wonder if he'll hear any pushback about that at all.
I can tell you what my pushback would be. My pushback would be immediately like, okay, well, Kyle, why is it in this state? How did that happen? Why did you're the one with all the control here. He's the one not giving the show back. He's the one not following the court order. He could have left amicably and chose not to. He had time to make that decision. There's a decent chance he could make that decision now, and he is refusing to. So this is where you would expect to hear the pushback. Nick, go ahead.
No, I think roughly along, this is misdirection. This is quite significant misdirection, because here are the facts. This was a partnership. This was an equal partnership. Kyle, to the best of my understanding, was told that he could have creative control over the show, but that was it. In all other respects, it was a 50-50 partnership. He was not empowered to kick off anybody else. If anything had to happen, the only thing he could do is ostensibly dissolve the partnership, which is not what he did. So first of all, he seems to use this passive voice. Well, gee, it happened. We don't know how it happened. It's Ronald Reagan. Well, Iran-Contra, mistakes were made. No, you did this. Now, he sits there and says, well, it was a mistake. It was a mistake. Yeah, but he's continuing to perpetuate everything that was based on that single action. If he wants to correct the mistake, what he has to do is acknowledge the fact that this is a partnership and operate on what would happen if you want to exit a partnership. All the documents, all the emails, everything. That's what it was. We know that for a fact. That's what the state says it was. That was the paperwork that he tried to file says it was. So he's sitting there talking about this needed to happen, which what he's really saying is I needed to get rid of Steve. You know what? If the show wasn't working the way it wasn't, then yes, maybe this needed to happen in the sense that the two needed to split. He doesn't get to make that choice unilaterally, and he is still making that choice. He is still making the choice not to pay Steve. He is still making the choice to fight this in court, despite the fact the documentation's out there. We know. So this is massive misdirection. It's not about he got rid of an employee the wrong way. No, he is still denying what is an absolute fact. Steve was a 50-50 partner, and he's not
And he
empowered to
hasn't been
continue to have
paid.
this conversation this way.
And he hasn't been paid.
Yep.
Failed in Engineering for says 2 differ. Number 1 is hostile to at Atheist Edge. It's civil. Thank you. She's saying that we're civil in here. We're not being mean to you. Min for $5 said, as a former Kyle's Patreon till the last minute, I admit that you and Steve have always been have always given people the benefit of the doubt. Thank you, at Chesh. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We're doing our best. We are also still trying to give benefit of the doubt to Jim here as well. I don't think any of us think that Jim is actively trying to smear Steve or trying to cause any damage. I think he's just, my best analysis of this is that I think he's woefully ignorant. And I don't mean that he's stupid. I mean ignorant as in the proper definition, as in he doesn't know. He does not know or understand the implications of the actions that he's taking, nor have a very good grasp on the situation at large, and what that means. Anyway, shall we continue?
Oh, and I'd like to add
sorry.
one thing.
Yeah, please.
We also, as a community, we've asked Kyle a lot of questions and we never got anything back. Even to this day, there's so much that we don't know. So every time Kyle comes up, it's like it's another like digging up the hurt that happened a long time ago, and we hope that maybe something can be answered. Maybe we can get some answers of why this had to happen. And you were gonna get our entire audience watching this, and all we see is Kyle here just waving it away as if it's no big deal, and we're still sitting here pretty peeved.
Well, let's keep in mind that Kyle's motivation for wanting this to, I would do it all over again. He wouldn't if he succeeded. He only wants to do it all over again because he gambled and he lost, and he's unwilling to accept that he lost. Iliamud for 10, Kyle did it to himself. Who gives a frack if Steve pissed people off? Steve didn't lie, cheat, or steal. Steve can piss people off and not be the problem. Kyle was the problem. I mean, I can't really disagree with that.
Joey D asked a very important question, and this is one that there's been some serious contention about, and I think we do need to clear up. He wanted to know what's happening to Kyle's $400 suits. Now, Chesh has, I think, said that she is having dibs on that, and the answer to that is irrefutably no.
I get the blue ones.
No. Okay, you can have the blue, but I think I have earned, for the 400, I have earned those suits, and I am sticking by that statement. And we're gonna so I'm not stupid enough. I'm not going to get into a knife fight with Chesh. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that's still in contention, and I appreciate asking such a serious question and the acknowledgement that really they probably go to the $400 suitor. But at any rate,
the things that really matter. The things that really matter.
Yeah. I'm glad. I'm just glad that was the only I came up with question. So I'm gonna have to bail soon. Now that that's done, I think everything's. I'm okay with just about anything else that we cover on this.
All right, so let's see if we get any pushback to Kyle on what he decided to say here.
At the height of, it happened right at the height of the show when it was still on a really fast trajectory. It was on a fast track to be the show. It was going to be the next Atheist experience. Everyone thought so. And so yes, that right there was heartbreaking. Have you ever seen it? I don't think it's still in syndication, but it was a show. Jason Lee, I think, was the main character. My Name is Earl. You remember that sitcom? Okay. Yeah. The whole premise was this guy, he was just a douchebag his whole life, and then something clicked. And there's something to be said for, I don't know if it was related to the alcohol or a 12-step program. 12-step programs are faith-based, and I've talked about it. Courtney especially, she's our psychology expert, but we talked about it on the show. But there is some good that comes out of a 12-step program, namely atoning for your past mistakes. So part of the 12-step, one of the steps is you go to everyone you've ever wronged while you were addicted and apologize and try to atone for that. And I think that's what I'm doing right now. And I think it's cleansing for not only, for most importantly, everyone that you've wronged, but it also helps your mental well-being. And well, I'll say right now, it's not just apologizing. I apologize to you, Kyle Curtis, for everything that I've done to wrong you during all this. Is there anything I can do, or I can leverage my channel to do to correct the mistakes I've made?
Absolutely not. I think that your channel has a great focus. It has a to bring people together in various aspects that trying to channel them through different means. With I know you did Atheist Book Club. You have the games that Aaron, Ron, and me and Shannon and that played.
The banner
just keep doing-
campaign, yeah, that raised a lot of
keep doing
awareness. Yeah.
I don't have anything for like me personally. We're square. Like again, I look at the situation for what it is, and I'm not going to put any sort of I got out of that negative headspace. I'm not going to attach any negative energy or waste any effort on a situation that just in the grand scheme of things, the entire situation was shitty. The whole thing, the way that everybody acted in every aspect was shitty. Everybody, us main players, me, Steve, Reds, et cetera, we all did stuff that was shitty, stuff that under normal circumstances we wouldn't do. But in the soil of YouTube and the chanting of crucify him from one half of the fans to me and the other half to Steve, you let that kind of run with you, and that's human nature. And it would be really not only hypocritical of me, but just a way that I don't want to be, for me to hold a grudge against people that got caught up in that, because we all got caught up in that.
If it was sticking to.
All right, so that's for 2440 that we're paused at. Did Steve just say he didn't want to hold any grudges as he still continues to not follow the court order?
You said Steve on accident.
Oh, sorry, did Kyle just say that he's not giving the channel back to Steve and not following a court order and then complain about grudges?
Well, and I will say this. He said in a DM that was released by Katie Joy Polson, she asked him why he hadn't turned over the money, and he said, "What? After Steve's done? No way. I'll never give him them." Done. That's what he said.
So he's actively holding a grudge.
So he's either actively holding a grudge, or he doesn't have the money to return, and he's going to lie about it and say that he's holding a grudge. One of those two things is true.
Doesn't have anything to do with the channel, though. He could pass the channel over.
Yep.
So, okay, I got a couple of notes on this. One of this is, please note, yeah, there was no pushback on anything we just paused about. He didn't say a single word about anything Kyle just said. I agree with something that he did specify at the beginning. This is for him and about him, which makes me question as to why you made this public. Because that's, like, this to me is burning a bridge with Steve and hurting your reputation. So if you wanted to apologize, sure, and then you said that, is there any way I can leverage my channel to assist you? You're asking somebody who is actively holding the channel that you apparently love so much, of somebody who's frauding people and acting maliciously towards Steve, admittedly, how you can leverage your channel to help him. First off, you already are. This whole thing does nothing but hurt you, hurt Steve, hurt the show, and help Kyle. Because Kyle's goal is to hurt the channel and hurt Steve, admittedly. Bro! You want to know why people say this interview sounds like you're sucking Kyle's cock? This is why! You just said it in your interview to Kyle. Hey bro, how can I make things better and easier for you? How can I leverage my audience and my channel in a way that benefits the person who stole from my friend tens of thousands of dollars and damaged his channel and has been actively trying to hurt his reputation and has been working with people who are trying to slander and smear him, etc., etc.?
Yeah, Jim, I don't think you could say what you just said and then pretend that this is an unbiased interview.
Or an interview.
Or an interview.
I want to think your intentions are good. I don't think you're a bad person. However, everything that you just said, I don't know, man. Hey, is there a way for me to use my truck to help you tow the car you just stole? That's what that sounds like to me.
What I'm going to say is I'm taking this as what he said it was in the beginning. And I had said earlier too, you can be tribalistic and still end up on the right side, even though you're being tribalistic. You can be tribalistic and be on the wrong side. You can be a jerk to someone who is still a bad guy. So I take this as he's trying to make amends for something that he feels he did wrong, which again, I think is a great thing. I'm taking it as that. I don't think it is what it says it is. in the title. This doesn't strike me as an interview. This strikes me as a chance for him to come clean for personal reasons, and I think that's great. And frankly, I probably would make it public too, because I think that's part of, if you're going to admit you're wrong, part of that. And I had said before,
I
made
agree
public.
with that. Yes,
yeah.
I agree with that. I think that what would be better, because I agree that the apology should be public. You said things publicly, you should take them back and apologize for them publicly. I agree with that. However, this was not the way to do it, because what has happened now is a more additional damage, and I would say, if it were me, I'm not Steve. If it were me, this would be incredibly damaging to my friendship and relationships, and your reputation. If you had done this as a proper interview and been like, tell you what, Kyle, as a favor to you to help make amends, I am more than willing to use my platform to allow you to say what you want or need to say. Fine, let Kyle say whatever he wants to say, but to not give him any pushback and to just sit there and agree with him when what he's saying is not only just factually incorrect, but harmful, is negligent at best, which goes against what Jim was saying at the very beginning of this, which was about taking responsibility. Do it publicly, make an apology publicly, but this is not an apology, this is groveling. This is groveling for some memes to somebody that you made that you were upset. This is what I was talking about when I said the crime does not justify the punishment here. To me, this is unreasonable. This is a very twisted sense of redemption to me. I harmed this person, and this person isn't friends with my other friend, so I'm gonna harm my friend to make good with this person. This does not follow, because now at this point I would probably argue that you need to apologize to Steve. So what does that look like? What does that look like with the NFIV thing? Because Jim made a ton of memes. This comes up later on in the interview. He made a ton of memes and stuff bringing up and saying this guy was sexually attracted to a gourd and that whole thing. So what are you going to do for them to apologize for that behavior? Because that would be the same behavior that you've shown towards Kyle, would be my question.
I mean, this whole thing, to me, I couldn't help but think that there was like an ulterior motive. Like maybe you wanted to like be friends with those people who had like blacked you out in the past or something. Like you want so badly to get back in their good graces that this interview would, I think, look good to them. I can't say that 100%, but it sounds like that's what you were going for more than anything else.
Yeah. Are we ready to keep going?
Yeah.
I don't know how long before Nick needs to take off.
I probably have 10 minutes, maybe, roughly, depends. Kind of.
Okay, so
family's been home for a week. We're all basically under quarantine.
All right, so we'll play about another 5 minutes. Let Nick chime in, then do his last word. That'll give him another 5 minutes to say whatever he feels like he needs to say. Then we will take a minor break because I gotta pee real bad. All right, let's go.
The point, and being an asshole, that's one level that people need to atone for. And I'm not asking others to follow my lead. I'm hoping they do, but I'm not gonna even ask it. You do what's in your heart, and you do what makes you feel comfortable. I'm talking to everyone out there but another level of douchebaggery that can be piled on top of this is not just sticking to the subject, but then I see from the very beginning people were looking outside of this particular issue and digging up irrelevant dirt on each of you, finding stuff in your past or things you're doing now that are unrelated to this issue to try to detract. Like I take person X aside, now I'm going to go to look at person Y. I'm going to find every nasty thing he's ever done, completely irrelevant of the situation at hand, and now I'm just going to try to make him look bad. And that might be human nature too. And if it is, holy shit, I weep for our future as a humanity.
It's a thing like I don't want to say anything, to perpetuate, this situation in any shape or form. But I feel like this is a good time to make this point. Drama sells. Drama is it's the avenue to funnel an audience to your content. The case in point with this is the streams, and this is the thing. Like there were so many streams, and at one point I counted like 50 or 60 streams that were done on me or one of my other co-hosts. From the Steve side of things. Like these streams were consistently happening over and over and over again, and it was the same thing. It was the same same story. There wasn't any updates or whatever.
The same thing was being done on your behalf as well, though. Admittedly, correct?
Well, I'm talking about. I mean, I'm sure there were people that were doing streams. I'm just talking about Steve himself streaming.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. But people,
on his channel,
people that were quote unquote loyal to you, we're doing the same thing against Steve, and,
Oh,
and
yeah.
still continue to. Okay.
I have no doubt about that.
All right.
I'm not saying it's not, but I'm saying like between myself and Steve on his own personal channel, there were that many streams that were, and I say that to draw this point here. There is a difference to me, and I think where I sort of got like I was kind of surprised with some things that were going on is once that caught on, like this was going to be a drama thing. There's that push to capitalize on it, and a lot's being made, and I'm sure we'll talk about here in a second about the court case, about the.
Only if you want to, Kyle, because
no,
A,
fine.
it's still pending, so if, you don't feel compelled to talk about it. I do have a couple questions, and
Sure.
Full disclosure, Steve and I had a private chat Saturday night, and he has a list of things he wants me to ask you. I don't want to be an intermediary between you two. I think that's for the courts to decide as well. I have some questions I want to ask that just happen to be
Sure.
on his list. So okay.
Sure. But I say that to say this point. There's a lot of talk about this court case, and I keep hearing it over again, and people keep saying, sending the clips of it to me where there's this sentence that's going on over and over again. Once we have non sequitur back, X will happen. Once we have non sequitur back, this show will happen. And I guess since we're going to be since you're going to be asking some questions that come from Steve, I just have one to go in the opposite direction. And that question would be, if your goal is not to be focused on the drama, if your goal is to be focused on that content like we were doing with the non sequitur show, you don't have to have, whether the court side with Steve or the side with me, you don't have to have that non sequitur show channel to do that. Instead of in the intermediate time where this is being decided by a court, continuing because he had the audience that mainly or mostly sort of defaulted loyal to Steve, you could have taken that and continued to do those shows, to do that, the non sequitur show. But instead, it was a hard left to non sequitur shows dead, reading deleted comments.
Are you muted, Chesh?
Damn it! So yeah, I paused at the 30-minute because I was going to go for 5. God damn, I suck at this. Okay, I'm gonna need to practice. Dear Lord. Okay, so there's some issues here. Again, no pushback. Surprise, surprise. I want to know if this is what Steve said. He said that, oh, Steve had questions, Steve has this, Steve has that. Does he? Did Steve come to you, Jim, and ask you to ask Kyle questions for him? What questions were they? Because I would be surprised if that's the case. And I want to point out, maybe I misheard, but I have yet to see any correction from Jim. He said he was a lawyer at the beginning. You cannot, this makes me think that you don't understand the situation that's going on between Kyle and Steve. You cannot be an intermediary between them. Not, I don't want to. You cannot. The only way you could be is if you're a practicing lawyer in Carolina and you get hired by Kyle. That is the only way. Dear, like, this to me makes me think that you do not understand the situation that you're having a conversation about. But let's let, Nick, please, go ahead.
No, I don't think I have, I mean, I think if he felt that he was being asked to ask questions on behalf of Steve, it was smart of him not to do it. I don't know what conversation did or did not happen, but smart of him to have his own interview and have it his way. But I think I think he's right not to look, ask his own questions if he's got any, and he seems to be doing what he wants to do. So
yeah,
I'm
as
gonna
he
need
should.
1 sec. Yep.
Yeah, and Nick, would you be, I know you have to run soon, but I'm curious, if Kyle is willing to be in better shape as he seems to be, and seems to be willing to talk to people more, would you have him on in time since you were covering this issue before?
Actually, we would. We are reaching out to Kyle, and we are offering him an interview, hoping that he will come on in time to discuss all of these issues. So that invitation is, we are actively now reaching out to him to see if he would like to come on.
It would be interesting, seeing as nobody seems to have properly interviewed him yet. People have let him come on and say whatever he wants to say, but I have yet to see a proper interview with Kyle. So, I mean, I'd be willing to do it also, but he's not going to talk to me. Are you high? Hell no, it's not going to happen. I wouldn't talk to me if I was him.
I've spoken with him before, and I've been blunt about direct questions, and he's been good with it. The interview would be what we would say it is a hostile interview. It would not be, we have some difficult questions for him, but we would not ask any gotcha questions. And probably the hardest questions would let him know probably a few minutes before the show starts what those would be, so that he would have time to prepare, and we would be his answers as well. I mean, this would be
Right.
this would be a serious discussion. This would not be but we would like to have him on, and we are reaching out to him at this very moment.
Yeah, I would have absolutely no problem coming on. I wouldn't sit here and berate him same way I wouldn't berate Jim, but if Jim's not willing to come on because he thinks this is too hostile, I have concerns about your commandments, Jim, and you should probably rewrite them because your commandment number 3 is having alligator skin. So, Nick, do you have any last words before I know you need to take off? And we are going to take a quick break because, like I said, I gotta pee.
I don't. Thank you very much for having me on. Thank you very much for not pulling a Katie Joy Paulson and taking the phone with you when you go to pee and broadcasting that live.
I will
really
not do
appreciate
that.
that. All right. Anything? Nope. Thank you very much for having me on. I hope we'll let you guys know what happens with him coming on in time. We would like to have him on. We're reaching out to him for that, and so thank you very much, Chesh. You, Mr. Sirius, and thank you all in the live chat, and thank you, Jim, too. I think I do think that your heart was very much in the right place here, and we do need more genuine engagement with people, even those we don't agree with. So thank you very much.
Thank you. You have a good day,
Thank
and
you.
I will be right back. Mr. Sirius, do you want to try and entertain everybody while we're gone?
I do. I gotta dance for everybody.
All right, do it. You're the main screen. I'll even make you super big.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, have fun.
Everybody just look at my ugly face. All right. So let me just open my mic. I can't figure this out. In any case, so yeah, when it comes to this whole situation, let me just kind of give you my it's not quite candid. I'm not sure what that means, but opinion. This was kind of like a hornet's nest, and I don't think Jim could have done anything about that. There was no way to come out of this like squeaky clean, because there's a lot of questions that our community had that we really would love to hear Kyle try to answer for a lot of things. And well, thank you, Steve, thank you, everybody. And we haven't gotten any answers, and he's been doing like interviews, but only with like people who refuse to give him those kind of answers. He did like one with Uni whatever, I'm not saying his name, but he did like that interview was a joke, and he refused to give him any, like, there was no hard questions asked for him at all. It was basically, Kyle, hey, well, you want to come on and say the same things that you said when you left the non-sec, all the lies that you told everybody, you want to double down on those? And he was like, yeah, I'd love to. And then he went on there and did it. And we already heard that. That wasn't very fun. It hurts. It hurts that people who would follow the show for so long, and then he did what he did. He decided he was going to do whatever he wanted with the show, and kicked everybody to the curb. We fell on the curb with Steve. Like, there was no tribalism. He kicked us all out. I was banned. I mean, I'm definitely banned in the non-sec chat, and I didn't say anything mean. It was just asking, a relevant question. But a lot of people, that's what happened to a lot of people, though. And we still want answers. We would love to have him sit down and just answer for the whole situation. Maybe what was going on in his head. Why did he do what he did, really? Where did the money go? Is he on drugs? There's so many things that we want to ask and that we have not been able to. And now somebody else comes up with an interview. Now, I was, even hearing that he was going to be on another interview, I was already suspecting that if he was going to do another interview, that it would be like super softball. I'm going to go on and just three-peat the nonsense that I said when he left to begin with. And going through this, I got exactly what I assumed was going to happen, and I don't know. See, this is why Jim should have talked to somebody, because he perfect stormed anger with this. This interview could not have gone any worse to incite anger in people who are still begging for answers from Kyle for the things that he had done.
Yeah, that's totally fair. You didn't porn bomb me while I was gone, did you?
A little bit.
Well, it's like there aren't as many people at YouTube working right now because of some, pandemic that's going around or something like that. But, Failed at Engineering for 5 said, yeah, start from scratch and gather all the genuine how many thousands of followers all over again. Right. Yeah, that's totally fair. Jens for 5 said, never doubted about Chesh, Steve, Mikey, Nick, Sweet, Nikki, Dapper, Aya, Bool, etc. You are all good people. Thank you. And Jen for 5 again said the same thing. Thanks! I appreciate that. Yeah, I think there's an issue in this set that is essentially that there's a lot of we's that Kyle is throwing out. There's a lot of, oh, me and Steve, or we did this. I want to see evidence. I want to see examples of what irrelevant dirt anybody has gone to go dig up on Kyle. I want to see that, please. If you could get me a source, because you sit there and agree with him. So that tells me that you must have done the research, right? You must have done the research. You didn't just go along with what he was saying, right? So you have some source of where this has happened. I've never seen it, so I would like to see where anybody has gone and gotten irrelevant dirt in Kyle's past. Because I've seen a lot of that coming from a group of trolls that have latched on. They're not even related to Kyle. They latched on to Kyle as an excuse to go after Steve, to take advantage of the situation, but I haven't seen anybody do that in the other direction.
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest, Kyle doesn't come up all the time. It's basically just about the case in general. We're interested in getting the channel back. And if he wants to consider us talking about getting the channel back as being like making streams about him, that's extremely disingenuous. And I don't think there's as many streams that are specifically about him. He can release himself from the channel at any time, and as soon as he does, he will be a thought in our, like a distant thought in our minds, and we'll eventually forget about him. He keeps himself relevant the longer he holds on to the channel.
Yeah, so it's more of a and here's the thing. Atheist Edge in the chat said silence does not equal agreement. I agree, but you saying, yeah, I've seen that, is agreement. So please source that if you could. The other one is that I think there seems to be a disconnect in when you question somebody. A question is not inherently hostile. If I lie to Mr. Serious and Mr. Serious said, "Did you lie to me?" That's not hostile. And then asking me, and I say, "Oh no, I didn't lie to you." And then he says, "Well, this and this doesn't line up." Is that hostile? No. No, of course it's not. It could be hostile. He could make it hostile if he wanted to. But would he be wrong in doing so? Not necessarily. Being a little bit, what should I say, confrontational is not necessarily hostile. Saying, actually, Kyle, that's factually incorrect, or actually, Kyle, this is inconsistent, is not being hostile towards him. That's not even not being inamicable. That's one of the reasons why I think Atheist Ed's had an issue trying to set up a talk with Reds, because he takes somebody saying, "Hey, you did a piss poor job in this interview," as it being inamicable. What's inamicable is the way you've handled this for anybody except for Kyle and who you seem to be hoping is Jimmy and Shannon. So anybody who, like Reds, who was part of this situation, or Bull, who was part of the situation, or Steve, who was part of the situation, your behavior here is inamicable towards them. However, what wouldn't be amicable if you had a talk with Reds is if you were unable to take that criticism. And your behavior thus far has shown that you're breaking your third commandment. Helios575/10 said, holding people to the truth and holding them accountable for their actions is not hostile. A good interview is focused on being honest and fair, not catering to the person you are interviewing. I couldn't have said it better myself. Beautiful.
I mean, even if he didn't have any information going into this, there were plenty of times when he could have asked Kyle to
Clarify.
elaborate on
Yeah.
the things he was saying, but it's just like he's just gonna say the old buzzwords that he said a million times, that we've heard a million times, that we wish we could hear anything different just once. But nope, same old buzzwords again. No, don't elaborate on nothing. Just get away with saying whatever you want, anything you want, Kyle.
Yeah, well, and I would also question Kyle's blasé attitude. Oh, well, this just happened. Well, we know for a fact that Kyle's the one responsible for what's gone on and his continuous actions to keep things the way they are and his stalling tactics. That doesn't mean you have to say, okay, yeah, but you're stalling though, so fuck you. No, it means that you respond by saying, okay, well, your attitude here seems to be inconsistent with the actions that you're taking. Why is that? That's not hostile.
And I didn't say anything specifically about Jim Chemo Maki. I don't think Chesh has either. We're critiquing the quote unquote interview. And
I haven't said anything about Jim as a person. The most that I've said about Jim as the person is that I think he went into this with good intentions, and I think that he was so concerned about being biased towards Steve that he incidentally ended up biased towards Kyle by accident. I do not think it's purposeful. I'm not trying to rip on Steve. I am talking about the way this was gone about, like how this happened, why this happened, what is wrong, what could be done better, and how can we approach things differently, and why people are having an issue with this interview. Because I got a couple of messages saying, hey, can you comment on this?
Yeah, and specifically because he had Kyle on. This wouldn't be like he could have done this with anybody else and wouldn't have made a big difference. But the fact of the matter is that there are a lot, like probably hundreds of people who are waiting for answers from Kyle, probably never going to get them. And when they get one more chance, somebody's actually going to get him on to interview him. We still get nothing. It's still the same old nonsense he said at the very beginning.
A lost opportunity is what this is. So we get into this issue at 9:50 where Kyle says that Steve should just make his own. And I want to touch on the drama stuff, but I'm going to wait for a little bit better because that's when I'm probably going to start getting a little bit... I have not been aggressive yet. I might start getting a little bit aggressive when we start getting into the drama stuff, and what is considered drama and what isn't. But I will straight up say, this court case is not drama. What's gone on with Non Sequitur is an ongoing legal issue. This is not drama. This is looking for updates and looking for information. If Jim does consider Non Sequitur drama, then him interviewing Kyle at all, and especially in the way that he did, is pushing that drama. So, what do we think? Is it reasonable for Kyle to say that Steve should just make his own Non Sequitur, even though Non Sequitur belongs to Steve?
I mean, it's just insanity. It's like somebody stealing your bike and being like, "You should just build a new bike," Like Non-Sec wasn't built overnight. It was. It takes a long time to get a channel of that kind of size and that kind of quality, and that's just an insane thing to say, I think.
I think it's not reasonable because keep in mind we're talking about the amount of damage that's being done. It's talking about the amount of money that's been stolen. Oh, hey, I had this really specific car that me and my friend bought together and me and my friend worked on together and we tricked it out, and it's very specific for me. It's very specific for him. It's very specific in that it's got things that we made ourselves and like shit that we've done to this car to make it our own. And he drove off with the car, and now he's telling me I should just make my own car. Kyle had that same opportunity. Kyle could have made his own channel to do the things that he wanted to do. Now you're blaming Steve for not doing that on his channel, like his personal channel, when Non Sequitur belongs to him and always has. At no point during this did Non Sequitur ever not belong to Steve, at least 50%, and ever since that judgment, 100%.
And it also kind of betrays Kyle's actions currently, because he is insinuating that making a new non-sec would just be, a kind of a blasé thing for Steve to do. And so now, why does he hold on to the channel? Like,
Yeah.
why not just give it up if it's so worthless?
Yeah, if it's not such a big deal that you can do, Kyle, why are you holding on to it? The answer is because, one, it's not blasé, and two, because it's malicious. And we know it's malicious, because Kyle said it's malicious. So it's a bizarre duality, and the issue that people are having with Jim is not that he had Kyle on, it's that he did not. It's a missed opportunity. It's a missed opportunity, and I think a lot of people feel like they wasted their time. So let's keep wasting our time. We're at 30 minutes. You ready?
Let's go.
Let's go.
It's from the Non Sequitur show, but it was a capitalization on the drama. And so what's disheartening for me is that what I was saying earlier, the focus of what the Non Sequitur show stood for was lost, and in its place was this clickbait drive
lost
to drama. And I think
I get what you're saying. He could have kept it going. The only thing that would have been lost in the interim is, well, I mean, his current biggest channel only has a third of what Non Sequitur show had in its prime, in its heyday. So he would have lost two-thirds of his viewership right off the bat. But you're saying if he had just molded that format onto the Steve McRae channel in the interim and kept it going, it would have been more noble of a thing.
Right. Here's the thing too with that,
because drama does get.
So the guy who stole the channel is telling us what the noble action would be in response to him stealing something from somebody else. This is gaslighting and abusive behavior. This is, oh well, he could have just done this, so it justifies me. So me stealing it wasn't really even that big of a deal.
Victim blaming. No, not really, but yeah, I agree. It's disgusting. Like he doesn't care. He has no like remorse at all. He
I got
blames
a
everybody
great
else.
clip for later. Don't worry.
He's blaming everybody else for not getting up after he's beaten them down fast enough.
Well, not getting
I mean,
up
what
and
the
letting
hell?
him get away with it, though. Right? He's complaining that Steve isn't letting him get away with it, not that, like, oh, well, he could have just made his own channel, and then I would have taken all of the followers that we already had and all the work we already done in this direction, and Steve could have started from fucking scratch all over again. Like, this is bullshit. This is only even close to being a reasonable expectation if they had split amicably. If Kyle said, you know what, I'm going to make my own channel, and Steve said, okay, well, I'm going to go make my own Non Sequitur this way, I'm going to continue going this way, I'm going to continue going this way, and they archive Non Sequitur, then this would be acceptable. But what Kyle is saying is that Steve should have allowed Kyle to take the channel, continue to do his own thing with all of the work that Steve and others put into it without paying them, by the way. And then they should just start from scratch and make their own new channel and new brand, etc., even though many people had to do with this. Failed at Engineering for 5 says, why should Steve do that? So Kyle can continue making money from a well-established channel, or run it into garbage and waste all of Steve's hard work and time? Yeah, exactly.
All right, I'm ready to continue if you are.
All right, let's see if we get any pushback along with any of this. Spoiler alert.
Views. Drama does
But
views.
But with the point that you just raised, where would the motivator be in that scenario? Is it the fact that you have to have that high number to be motivated to do that content? Or like that's my question. Like,
if you want to put out the quality, say our show's quality, we have one benefactor and we got a good camera. We're constantly making improvements, but our improvement level is slower because we have less patrons, we have less viewership, we have less ad revenue. The more revenue
one of you
coming in, the
isn't
more time you
taking
devote to the
everything to
channel,
improve
and you
their
can
own
make a
setup.
better quality product.
in most cases, I would agree with you. But I mean, we both know that Steve is on the internet, all day, all night. Like he never gets off the internet. He's either doing blogs or whatever. So the time is there. I'm just making the ultimate point that the fact that there was a conscious decision whether he could continue with trying to put out the content that the Non Sequitur show did, or he chose to drive home the drama route. And that's further proven by not just stopping at me, but going to Katie, going to the Team Mom, Lily Jean. I mean,
Steve McRae, if I know you're going to be watching this, and here's where you're going to, please don't hate me, but I'm going to agree with Kyle on this one. The constant desire to just expose this drama, whether it might be founded or unfounded. This is just Jim Hall's opinion, just my personal opinion. I wouldn't be doing it. I don't think, because I don't want to perpetuate that kind of drama. If that's the kind of show, and Steve, that's not Steve. Steve doesn't. That's not.
Pause. All right, we're at the 32:45 minute mark. First off, commandment number 19 on Atheist Edge is, thou shalt not tell a creator that they should change their format or what they should do with their channel. Second of all, Steve never got into Teen Mom. He got into talking about what Katie was doing. and the reason he got into and then helping another teen mom creator. One, he helped this other teen mom creator because they lost $2,000 a month with 6 kids at Christmas. Is that drama to you, Jim? Second, this is where I'm going to get a little bit hostile. Secondly, he was talking about Katie falsely accusing him of sexual harassment. Is responding to false accusations of sexual harassment drama, Jim? Is responding to Katie telling people that you committed fraud against the VA and people accusing you of crimes drama, Jim? Is the Lily Jean stuff a girl who's been harassed since she was 15 and talking about how people get cyberbullied to the point of suicide drama, Jim? Because I would love to have you actually think about what you just fucking said. Non Sequitur was fraud and crime and lies by Kyle, and his continual lies and his continual holding of the channel hostage and stealing tens of thousands of dollars. And you think this is drama when there's updates to it is perpetuating drama. Meanwhile, you just sitting here like, you were worried that people were going to be concerned because you went soft on Kyle. Oh, I threw softballs at him. You didn't throw any balls, you sucked on them. There was no ball throwing involved. What are you even talking about? You're totally fine with doing what you're doing here and throwing your friends under the bus. People who you claim are your friends. Without thinking for a second about what the content actually is. Without thinking for even a fucking second. When we did our review of Lily Jean's stuff after we had her on for an interview to set people up to understand the context of what we were talking about, is that context drama? When we then posted all of the list of names at the beginning of our show talking about cyberbullying of people who killed themselves because of cyberbullying, drama? Is suicide drama to you? This is where I get hostile. This shit is not drama. Are you ignoring Caffeine Corner, or is all that Caffeine Corner drama? It is explaining to people the difference between drama and explaining to people the difference in being able to recognize when people are pushing narratives. Is that education? Is that drama? What part of Steve's channel is drama? Is it because you think he did too much content on Katie that's what made it drama? The amount of times she lied and he responded to those lies? You tell me. You fucking tell me.
And on top of that, even if he's just trying to talk about specifically Kyle's stuff, this could all end on Kyle's want. Like, as soon as Kyle wants, all of this ends. Anytime. It's all up to him. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just what he said was absolutely ridiculous.
And on top of it, he's breaking his own fucking commandment. Number 19. Would you like me to read it verbatim? Number 19 is, thou shalt not tell a content creator they should switch to a different format, style, or set of topics. Quote, Christians are boring, you should only interview atheists or science experts from now on, end quote. Sounds great, now go start your own fucking channel and do exactly that. Well, apparently Non Sequitur's so easy to do. If you want it, Jim, go make it your fucking self. You're a hypocrite because of this. Now I'm calling you out. Now I'm being aggressive. Am I being hostile? No. Is this a hostile environment for you to come in here? Would you be allowed to say your piece and explain yourself? Yes. Would you be able to do so without pushback? No. Has anything that I've said been mean? Absolutely not. This is the main problem with this interview. You are sitting there nodding along with Kyle without having done any research or any work into what has actually gone on. At best, you're ignorant of the situation. I have two main questions for Jim. One, how much do you actually know about the situation before you went into this? And two, this is a spoiler, my main question, what about Boole? Because at no point in this entire interview do you bring up what happened to Boole. At no point. Zero. Boole is a huge part of Non Sequitur. A huge part of Non Sequitur. That doesn't even include the fans that you're basically telling to go fuck themselves. Ignoring that. Boole is a big deal. Boole matters. Boole is just as important as I am going to be in the future, as Steve is now, and as Kyle was. You spent this entire interview listening to Kyle spew his shit, and at no point did you question him about Boole. Zero. None. Nothing. You don't think that would be important? You don't think people care about Boole? Or did you just forget? Did you forget about him? Because this is what it sounds like to me. I don't think you were ill-intentioned. I don't think you meant poor or bad towards anybody with what you did. But your negligence, and at best ignorance, and I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt that you were ignorant to this. You did not know. You did not realize. You forgot about Boole during this interview. And shame on you for that.
Well, I mean, worst case scenario, which is the one that I was thinking maybe it could be, is that it never was about non-sec. It wasn't about Boole. That's why we don't hear about Boole. He didn't care. It's why I didn't do any research. It was nothing about that. This was about getting Kyle on so he could do his apology, so he can make himself look better in the people's eyes that he wants to see, and everything else is like completely irrelevant. He just needs to get an hour through it and then end it, and that's that. And he thought that it would just be fine, but I mean, I don't know, man.
There are things in this interview that you didn't realize the extent at best. I don't think Jim understood the extent of the topic that he was getting into. I don't think he understood at again, like I said, at best this is ignorance. This is ignorance and negligence at best. This is a big deal. And this isn't a big deal because a lot of people, and this isn't a big deal because you're getting pushback, and this isn't a big deal because people are mad at you. Nobody hates you, Jim. There's no anger here in that, like, towards you as a person. It's the way you've handled this. It is that you are straight up negligent at best. So you need to apologize to Boole after this. 100%. And this isn't including the apology that you should be giving the Non Sequitur fans, the apology you should be giving your own audience for this piss-poor performance, because I will stand by that this is a piss-poor interview, because it's not an interview. And I would also probably, at the end of this, I'm going to wait till we get to the end, but at the end of this, I'm going to make a demand of you. And the demand is going to be to change the title. Because right now it's bullshit. And you're lying to people. So, ready to go?
Let's go.
3246, here we go.
His natural state. I think he feels like he's being driven to this. But I do agree with you, Kyle. I think it's a little too much. I think every time someone slights him, he has to make it his personal mission to try to take them down and expose them for who they are. Instead of just, it's so much easier to ignore trolls. And he has a hard time ignoring trolls.
Yeah, he does. I mean, it's a, it's like,
you'd be surprised about how much trolling we ignore.
I'm not going to be so, I'm not going to lie and say that there aren't qualities that Steve has where, when it's a subject where he really knows what he's talking about and is engaged in, he can be entertaining to listen to. Like when he does things about the science or the philosophy thing, except for the atheist definition thing. Other than that, he can get he can be entertaining at times. And taking myself out of the entire situation and forgetting about all the shitty things that happened, it is in a way sort of sad to see what he could be doing versus he's diving into Teen Mom. I think that was the point where I was just like, I mean, what is happening here? Like something's off. Like I don't even like the guy. I mean, there's no love lost between Steve and I, but Steve could be making a much better content decision and stick to that, and the channel could grow just like the Non Sequitur show did if he stuck to it. But the easy route is what's going to get 700 people watching, and that is, calling somebody stupid and exposing them.
You just said
And there's the pause. 34:48. Steve's taking the easy route. You think so?
Yeah, waiting through all this, lawsuit and everything. Super easy.
This seems like this definitely seems like the easy route. The easy route definitely is hanging on to your ethics about whether or not it's okay for other people to tell people what the definitions of atheism are, or philosophy. Is Steve not doing shows about philosophy anymore? Because I'm pretty sure we did one just the other day. If I'm not
Heck, there was
mistaken.
one 4-hour long one that happened earlier today.
Yeah, earlier today. What were we talking about? What is the easy route for Steve in this case? Is it to lie down, let Kyle take the channel? Is it to lie down, let Kyle take the channel, and then just make his own quote-unquote non-sequitur to start again from scratch? Because that would probably be the easiest. It would be at least the least confrontation, most amicable way to do it, where he could quote-unquote still be friends with Kyle. Or would it have been to let Godless Engineer and his wife go ahead and continuously poke the bear and start shit on Twitter and then go crying to say they never did anything? Or is it to let people say that you committed VA fraud and committed sexual harassment and those allegations? There is a time to address accusations, and there is a time when people are just trolling. This, to me, reeks of inexperience. I don't think Jim knows what it's like. Steve has been hounded for years by people constantly that he's ignored and ignored and ignored. It wasn't until recently that we actually did pushback, and there was a specific reason that we did that. When the Fiona video came out, a couple months went by and people started actually picking it up and wanting to know what went on, and people who otherwise knew better were getting caught up in bullshit. That's why we responded to it. And that video, the Calumny and Obloquy video, to this day remains, it stands on its own. Nobody has been able to debunk that video. There are times when accusations need to be addressed. Keep in mind that half of the stuff that we were dealing with Katie was for fun because it was Dumb Fuck of the Year. Yeah, we were addressing her claims, but also we were pointing out the dumb shit she was doing because she was a contestant. There's a lack of context here and a complete lack of understanding about, one, how social media works, two, what the difference between somebody who is a troll and somebody who is actively trying to smear you. Keep in mind that Katie, Godless Engineer's wife, Jimmy, and Shannon all said shit about Steve's financial situation. All of them. And none of them, zero, have gone ahead and publicly corrected themselves and apologized for their behavior. Zero. None. Zip. Not one of them. So what are you expecting here? Should people just roll over and take abuse? Keep in mind, Jim is the one who came to me and requested to be on an interview or have a talk with me to defend himself before anybody had said anything publicly.
And he is more than welcome to come on. I mean, if you don't want me to leave, then I'll be fine with that. If he just would come on and at least defend himself a little
I'll
bit.
leave. I'll
Yeah,
mute
I'll
and
talk
you can
to
talk
him.
to him.
But the issue here, my biggest issue is that he's gaslighting this entire situation. I've been here since, I've been heavily involved in stuff as soon as the breakup. I was just a regular kind of watcher, but as soon as the breakup happened, I felt like I had to step in. And every situation that they're talking about just being a litany of trolls. I mean, yeah, that's might be what it looks like from afar, that shit keeps happening, and you might be hearing about this secondhand. But I lived through it, and there is every entire thing that Steve responded to has a very great reason, and I don't think Jim would have done any different or any less. You can't just wave it away like it's trolls. That's not what this is. There were shit tons of trolls in there too, but he didn't hear about those. He only heard about the ones that were actually necessary to respond to. So saying that all this is trolls is absolutely gaslighting, and it's just smearing
Minimalizing.
Steve. It's making our entire community look worse because we're just a bunch of troll. Like we interact with trolls all the time. You come in here, you're going to be swimming with trolls. Yeah, that's real nice. Thanks for making my community look like that when that's not even fucking close.
And we're so hostile. Can we point out that how many times Red's rhetoric and Steve were like, no, don't go after Shannon. Shannon kept sticking her toe in, got bit, and then pulled back. And then stuck her toe in, then got bit, then pulled back. She's never actually publicly made this right. Now, she might have done so privately, that's between her and Steve, but that does not fix or address any of the things that she actually has said and or done. Jim is trying to make good with Shannon and Jimmy. He said so. And he's using Kyle to do it. His intentions might be good. His intentions might be, you know what, everybody should hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Steve, get in line. The fuck? The fuck? Yeah, everybody is trolls. Everything we respond to is drama. People killing themselves is drama. It's just trolling. Alright, let's keep going. We're at 54:48. Here we go.
Something out loud that I've been thinking for a long time, and call me naive. I didn't want to think it's true, and out of sheer desperation, sheer naivety, I think maybe I have this idea that maybe after this is all said and done, ideally, a perfect world, the case is closed. The non sequitur is back in. Let's say it goes to Steve. Steve has control of it. You two atone for you atone. Okay. It's hard to say this without actually just showing my hand. I feel like you did him wrong. So in a perfect world, I feel like you.
No shit.
Apologize for every mistake you made. Apologize for the way that you ended the non sequitur show. Do everything in your power to make it up to Steve. He accepts your apology, and he apologizes for all the vicious attacks on his side. And then we all meet in Dallas, or we meet at the next where's the Faithless Forum? In Austin in June, and everyone sits around, you and Steve and all your fans sit around and share a beer together.
I do admire your your
I agree with Kyle here. Paused. We're at 36:23. I agree with Kyle here. I admire your optimism, Jim, but it is incredibly unrealistic. And that's not because of Steve. And that's not because of the Non Sequitur show fans. It's to do with the person you're talking to. You're completely disregarding the context and the situation. This is why this isn't an interview. You're sitting here being chummy and being perfectly fine with Kyle, and you're sitting there nodding your head and agreeing, and I'm not saying silence. You're nodding your head in agreement, and then you're saying when you get to go that you are, yeah, no, Steve should do this. Oh yeah, Steve should do that. And oh yeah, wouldn't it be great if everybody held hands and were friends, and that Non Sequitur continues with Kyle? Do you have any idea how pissed off everybody would be if Steve was like, yeah, okay, let's just get along and do Non Sequitur again? Do you have any idea the emotional sacrifice and a mental sacrifice and ethics sacrifice Steve would have to make to cause that to happen? Hey, Mr. Serious, you're a fan of the show. How pissed would you be if Steve was like, you know what, fuck Chesh and fuck all the work we've done for the past couple months. I'm gonna go back and work with Kyle and do Non Sequitur again.
Well, Steve would be out of our community. Fuck that.
Screw you, Steve. We're gonna go do our own Non Sequitur with blackjack and hookers and not Kyle.
Yeah, I'm not over here because of Steve. I'm not a magnet who's attracted to Steve. That's not how this is. I'm just waiting for the right things to happen, and Steve just happens to be standing next to me. if Steve starts acting crazy, there's nothing that would stop me from dropping him like a bad habit.
Right. So what I'm saying here is that Jim's idealism is unethical. His desire is not an ethical outcome. Not because of him, but because of the situation and because of the context of what he's talking about. He's talking to someone who stole tens of thousands of dollars. He's talking to somebody who stole the channel. He's talking to somebody who is continuing to still hold that channel hostage. And he's saying, yeah, but you guys should, in an ideal world, and I know I'm being idealistic about this, this would be the outcome. But the outcome doesn't negate the shit that happened. You're not saying, hey, if you never did this, wouldn't it be great if the show was still going? That's not what you said. What you proposed was, hey, all this shit happened, but Steve still decided to work with you anyway because you atoned. Okay, well, how does one atone for this? That's a question for Jim. In what way? What would Kyle have to do to atone for Steve, in your opinion? I know there's probably, I'm willing to confidently speak for Steve on this and say nothing. His answer would be to fuck off. And then,
that'd be my answer too.
Keep in mind that Kyle doesn't have to just atone to Steve. Kyle has to atone to Steve, he has to atone to the show and the fans, and he has to atone to Boole. So does he need to go to each individual person? You like the Earl show. So Earl goes to each individual person. So does Kyle have to go to each individual fan of the show? I'm curious what the expectation would be. This is what you're doing in response to making a couple malicious memes. And even Kyle said that was ridiculous. And I agree with Kyle. This is ridiculous. This is not, the punishment does not fit the crime in this case. So if this is the response, what needs to be done for a couple of memes, what is on the scale that you've set, what is the equivalent that Kyle should have to do? And I would love an answer to that, to be honest. I would love that. That'd be fantastic. I don't know. Quite frankly, I have no idea. I don't know. We'd have to pay him. He'd have to give the show back, obviously. But would he have to work for free for a bunch of time? Would he have to make a channel that is dedicated to how great Steve is and basically post for, I don't know, as once a week for as many months as he's not given the channel back or not paid Steve, so we use the day counter and see? Like, what would be the atonement? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me.
You think we'll find out later in the video?
Fuck no. All right, that was a good one. I like that. You have anything to add to this one? I've been ranting.
No. What time are you at?
I am at 36:23.
All right, I'm with you.
Yep. Okay, so I do want to remind people that at the beginning of the stream, Jim was talking about responsibility. And Jim was talking about how we're creators and we should be responsible for the shit that we put out and how it affects other people. And also we should be responsible in that, you'd expect that you would follow your own rules, and we're gonna bring up commandment number 3 and commandment number 19. I'll go over the commandments afterwards. Once we're through this, I made sure to put the side chat in below us so you guys can see the side chat, because I'm going to bring up the side chat later. Don't worry, I snipped things. I watch everything. So, I agree that this is incredibly optimistic, and Godless Scummer said, thing Jim needs to realize is that if Kyle had taken the out that Steve had offered when this blew up, then an amicable relationship may have been possible, but Kyle wouldn't do that. Exactly. The thing is that what Jim wants is inconducive because of the person he's talking to. And he does not acknowledge that. And not acknowledging that is a concession and a slight against Steve, because the way you present it and the way you agree along with whatever Kyle is saying is implying that Steve is the one making it not this way. Exactly like what Kyle said. Kyle tried to say that, the reason things are taking too long is because Steve keeps putting out videos and I'm sending everything to my lawyer that doesn't exist.
Yeah, it makes it sound like Steve shares half the blame. and that's insane.
Yep. All right. 3623. Off we go.
I will say that. And you know, I completely understand. You know, you like when you said that you feel like I did Steve wrong. I completely get that. I completely understand that. That's a valid way to think. I think just speaking on that.
Let's just go ahead and cut to the case because it seems like it's time. For
Sure.
my first and only, and really, you know, I wasn't even predicting that you wanted to talk about the actual, you know, because it's still ongoing. My question for you, and Steve wants to know this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we do have a recording of you saying.
Pause for a second. He's about to ask a question that he said that Steve wants to know this. So keep that in mind. And Steve, you're in the chat. Could you please confirm whether or not this is actually a question that you asked, or you asked Jim to ask Kyle? Let's go.
That you got served. So you know that's out there. I mean, it's no surprise. But your legal action, you submitted a legal action saying I didn't get served properly. Do you feel like you got served properly? And are you being completely honest with the fact that you didn't know that you got served originally because of the wrong address?
Completely honest. I had moved by that point to Charlotte, and
This is the first real
the
question
way the
he's
service is
asked.
done in North Carolina is that most people, you know, when you're in a lawsuit, they have personal service. Like you're personally served from the service processor. I don't remember, and I actually haven't seen the clip, by the way. I think that somebody sent it to me. I know that there's a clip of me saying something about, you know, getting served or whatever. I don't know specifically what I said because I haven't watched it, but I don't doubt that, you know, what you're saying is true. And I would venture to guess that I'm talking about that in terms of like an overall picture of me knowing about the lawsuit that's going on.
Right.
There's a difference between, you know, being served properly and knowing that the court case is going on. I don't know what the judge is going to, you know, decide.
That's an important distinction. You had, unless you were living literally under a rock, you had to have known that you were served. But you're contending that if I didn't get served properly, it doesn't apply, right? So you were aware that you were being served. Your argument is that you didn't get served properly.
I found out that a lawsuit was going on. The official paperwork that is by law, you know, supposed to start that proceeding was never relayed to me. And so my contention, you know, it's, again, this goes back to this being such a clusterfuck of a situation. Just like there are the clip that you said of, you know, me saying something about servers, there are the clips of Steve admitting that he sent it to the wrong address. There are like 3 or 4 of those clips. I actually sent them in my affidavit with the transcripts of them, where he said we something to the effect of I knew it was an old address. He was defending not doxing me per se, and his defense of that was that's not his address. So I didn't dox Kyle. I put Kyle's address up there, but it was his old address. So technically that's not.
Oh yeah, okay. Let's assume for the.
All right, pause. 4022. One in the chat, if you think that Jim is going to correct Kyle about the way service is done in North Carolina, about his lies, about whether or not he got the information, about his misrepresentation of what Steve was saying in those clips about living in the wrong place or not knowing what his current address is or knowing that it's an old address is, and the nuance of that situation. One in the chat if you think that Jim is going to bring this up and push back and talk about it. 2 in the chat if you think it's not going to happen. I'm looking forward to the what the expectation is here. No, 2. So I'm getting in trouble for giggling. Sorry. Dear Lord. Do we understand that Kyle made a shitload of improvements to his you remember that? You were a viewer of the show, Mr. Serious. Do you remember that Kyle's backgrounds and his shit started improving?
Yes.
Do you remember any of Steve's shit improving?
Well, he added tape to his headset.
You recall that Jim said something about how, we have like somebody who financially helps back our show and we make improvements and we make them slowly.
Yeah.
You notice how he had that opportunity and actually brought it up, but didn't say anything about when Boole was struggling financially? And that Steve had broken glasses for fucking how long did that go on for? How long was that meme?
Yeah, broken glasses and a broken headset. See, I want to say something about that, but Jim says something later in this thing
All right,
And
we'll get
so I was
there.
gonna...
We'll get there. I don't get it. I'm the best benefit of the doubt. I'm trying to give Jim as much of the benefit of the doubt as I can. The only thing that I didn't give him the benefit of the doubt on was the shit that he literally said about Katie and stuff being drama. Putting that aside now, let's go back to giving, because it's not that I didn't give him the benefit of the doubt. That is just literally what he said. So let's move on from that, and we're gonna go back to giving Jim as much charity as fucking possible. You want everybody to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. You claimed at 3 minutes and 45 seconds that you're a lawyer. You haven't responded in the chat to correct me if that's not what you said and I misheard you. Perhaps I did misunderstand or mishear what you were saying. That was one of the questions I was going to ask had you decided to come in. As per, your request. This is a ridiculous question. It is at least finally a reasonable question to be like, hey, are you actually being honest about this, and what do you actually think about this service? And then he lies, and then you don't follow up or don't push him on that. You don't question him. So what's the point of asking the question? And we have done how many streams explaining the law? Explaining what it is, looking verbatim at what the law actually says, and having actual lawyers come on and have these conversations with us.
It was one of those drama streams.
Oh, right. Oh, of course. So Jim must not have watched it. It was drama. Where is the research? Did you... I want to know how... This is why my other question, besides what about Boole, was how much research did you put into this? How much work did you do to know the person you were talking about, understand the situation, and understand the legality of the issues you were talking about, especially if you were going to ask him a question like that? Do you think that your claim is legitimate? Were you being honest? You're talking to somebody who has been proved to have been lying for months about even having just like something as simple as having a lawyer or not, which he didn't need to lie about. He chose to lie about that.
And what's worse, I think, is that he gives Kyle a opportunity to take a jab at Steve, saying that, like, yeah, Steve maliciously sent that to the wrong address. He knew, and I have clips saying that he knew. And, that's fine, I guess. I don't know how he doesn't think this is going to not damage his relationship with Steve.
Oh, yeah, and he agrees. He says, oh, yeah. He says, okay, and then goes down a hypothetical, right? So here's the thing. We all know what Kyle said. He said in the original papers that I was served, or in the original papers that I was served. Sorry, that's the exact quote. In the original papers that I was served. So Jim clearly knows this exists. Kyle clearly knows this exists. And Kyle goes on this diatribe about accusing Steve of this, that, and the other thing to make this claim. Play the clip, Jim. Or quote the clip. You're the one who asked the question. You're the one who has the opportunity to be prepared here. This is negligent. You asked a question and did not do any kind of follow-up or care to do any kind of follow-up with whatever. This essentially to me is, I'm asking questions to make myself feel better, which is fine, but you're presenting it as not a negative thing in any way, shape, or form. Not asking follow-up questions, not putting any pressure anywhere. That doesn't mean hostile. That doesn't mean not amicable. It means you asked a question that you weren't prepared to follow up for due to negligence in a situation and a context of an ongoing problem that has the eye of a lot of people on it. Change your title. Change your title and throw a Brazers logo on it. How about that?
And you know what is kind of even insulting to the idea that he was throwing softballs? Is that this was barely a softball, and he had to say a bunch of qualifiers before it. Like, this question's not coming from me, so, don't look at me when I throw this ridiculous softball at you, but how about them papers?
Do you think you're being honest? What a bizarre question. Do you think you're being honest, or are you being honest? Not what? What? What?
I don't think he's here to answer.
What? Oh, did he run away? You mean that thing that Reds made part of his contention for coming on? Reds is, we'll go over that. We'll get there. We'll talk about that afterwards. All right. Let's keep going. Here we go.
All right.
Make an argument that
What were you at?
whoever served the
40.
subpoena took it to the wrong
I'm
address
sorry,
and physically
you
injured.
40,
said that.
30.
And you do have a case there. What would happen in that scenario? Is this basically
Okay, I'm with you.
not hung jury, but does this just get thrown out of court and is there an opportunity to start this action over from scratch?
There are two things that I did. I filed a motion to set aside with prejudice, which is a standard thing that you're going to do just for formality's sake. I have no unreal expectations that it's going to get thrown out with prejudice. Like I'm not delusional, and I don't think that's a thing. I put together what I thought was a case for it.
Kyle's less
More than
delusional
likely,
than Jim is.
That part will not be accepted. I completely see that coming. What I do anticipate happening is that the judgment will be set aside, and then it will allow Steve and I to have the back and forth, with the court, both sides on the table, and then the judge making a call based on those two sides.
Oh, so the process is not going to have to be started completely from scratch, started over. Like the
Not that I'm
subpoena
aware.
didn't get sent, so I don't know what it means to be set aside. But this current case just stays in effect, and then now that both of you, the only thing that so all
So
that.
let me just say that on that point real quick. Number one, I'm not an attorney, and I'm only saying what I've kind of gathered with this. The set aside part is the default judgment. So because there wasn't a defense put up from my side on that, the judge would just be saying, okay, I gave Steve a default judgment because there wasn't it wasn't contested in the original thing.
Because
So
right now a judgment has already been passed down, and the only thing set aside right now is the total dollar amounts because they haven't had a chance to look at the.
This will set
financial
everything
records.
aside. This will set the entire judgment aside.
Right, but right now the financials are set aside
Right.
Until the financials can be looked at.
Right.
Right now, there's already been an opinion sent down by the judge, correct?
Right.
And that's to immediately give over the passwords, and so that's already been done.
That decision has been made. My motion is to petition the judge to set that aside.
Okay. And
Go
you don't
back
think
to
it's going to happen. And so when it doesn't happen, which is
No,
going to bring, it's going to.
I don't think it'll get thrown out with prejudice, meaning that it can't be brought back in court. So I filed for that, so the
I
judge can
see.
say you're thrown out, and Steve, you can't bring it back into court.
I see.
I don't think that will pass. What I do think will is the set aside on the basis that service wasn't properly, and then
Okay.
both sides will have to state their
I see.
their case again.
So best case scenario for you now is that none of the judgments apply. We start back there from square one. The two of
Right.
you get together and argue in front of the court.
Right.
Who gets what?
Right.
And then how do you see that going? Do you see Do you see it being confirmed that you're going to have to give over the passwords and the books and the show and the residuals and the Patreon and the?
Personally, no, and I'll explain why. And again,
All right, pausing. We're at 44:10, and we're pausing because he's about to go into residuals of the show. Jim.
Okay, before you go into this, I need to step away for just a second, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, you go ahead. I'll come over. Okay, Jim. We've talked about this on live streams. We've talked about this over and over and over again. Kyle is asking, essentially, what he just explained, at least from Kyle's point of view, what Kyle just explained, is that he wants to set back to the point where he has an opportunity to make a case to the court. The thing that he failed to do. After given an extra 20 days or so to do so. Why do you ignore this? Kyle is saying now that he essentially has an argument that would allow him to make a case that there wasn't any partnership, or that he should have control of the channel, or what he did was not wrong, and he should not, like, that Steve shouldn't be awarded anything. First question should be, what's your case? What do you have? What reason do we have to think that's even remotely possible? Your next question should be, okay, well then why didn't you show up in the first place? Because what you're going to have to do is show cause. The reason things are on hold right now because of the virus is because there has to be a hearing for Kyle to show cause of why he has not complied, or why he didn't show up to court the first time. Why are you accepting and running this hypothetical when you're not willing to address any of the shit that Kyle's actually saying? Are you even listening to what Kyle is saying at this point? He wants to set the court back to before the judgment was made, the default judgment, because he thinks that he can make a case now. So that either that means he refused to or didn't think he could make a case before, but now he thinks he does. What would change his mind? That would be an interesting question. Kyle, what's changed your mind? You didn't show up to court the first time for whatever reason, and now you think you have a case. That would be an interesting question. That would be an interesting follow-up. I don't understand a portion of this. This doesn't make sense to me. You have an opportunity here, and you are so distracted by this idea of redemption and this idea of making amends towards Kyle that you are unwilling to even ask him about the shit he's talking about. That doesn't mean be unamicable, that doesn't mean be aggressive, that doesn't mean be mean to him, that doesn't mean that you should treat him like shit. People should be treated as people always. Always. People should be treated as people. No matter what they've ever done, I don't care. I don't care what the hell you've done. You are still a human being. But you're treating Kyle with kids' gloves. You're not treating him like a human being. You're bending over backwards for him. You have anything to add? Welcome back.
I didn't hear anything you said, but I'm pretty sure you probably covered everything.
I am thorough, if nothing else.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's see. 1 in the chat if you think there's going to be any pushback. 2 in the chat if you think there's not going to be. Let's go!
You know, this is one individual that has the power to make those decisions. You know, he could have a completely different look at it than I do, and you know, it could go either way. I'm just telling you what I think.
It could go either way.
Default judgment based on it not being contested originally. There wasn't an answer from my side. There was no evidence put forth.
My side.
Tangible.
You. Only you. You're the only one on your side.
There were, you know, there was any agreement in terms of a partnership between the two of us. My thing was when the channel sort of fizzled out.
Pause. 4455. Did you guys catch that? Did you catch what he said? I'm gonna play it again. I'm gonna put it back just a couple seconds. Okay, ready? Here we go. We're playing it again. We're at 4424.
Steve won that default judgment based on it not being contested originally. There wasn't an answer from my side. There was no evidence put forth, tangible, that states that there were, you know, that there was any agreement in terms of a partnership between the two of us. My thing was when the channel sort of fizzled out, I was trying to broker like a deal with getting Steve 50% of the videos that he was in.
45. Kyle just said there was no tangible evidence brought to the court that there was a partnership.
How does he know what was brought to the court?
If he wasn't served? There were emails that have been shown that were brought as evidence. There's plenty of stuff. Does Jim not know about these things? And is it responsible for Jim not to know anything about the case if he's going to be talking about it like this?
That is true. Talking about the case at all, not knowing anything, is really, I can't think of the word. Sometimes I get lost in words sometimes.
Irresponsible?
Irresponsible. There you go.
That thing he was talking about at the beginning? The thing he was like, you know what, as influencers and as people with platforms, no matter how big you are, you're responsible to your audience and for your actions. And yet, let's look around us. Who's in here? Oh, I mean, we had Nick in here for a little bit talking about Kyle stuff, and you got me in here, and we've got you in here, but I don't see Jim in here taking responsibility.
I mean, he could be. Like I said, I mean, either one of us could leave, I guess, and he could take whoever's spot. I mean, I don't bite that much.
Yeah, I think I've been pretty nice the whole time. I got a little bit harsh, and I got a little bit maybe aggressive at that drama bit, but I don't think I've been mean. I haven't, like, called him names. I've said his actions are I would consider irresponsible, but he's more than welcome to come in here and explain how they're not, if he feels like they aren't.
For some reason, I got a hunch that he's not even in the chat anymore.
Oh, probably not. He probably ran off, which is one of the main reasons why Reds put a contingent on him coming in to have this conversation with a contingent that you can't rage quit. Oh, apparently Jim said that he would go on my channel in 2 hours, me and him, to ask/answer questions. Okay, that's good. However, Jim requested, before this interview came out, before he posted this, at midnight, by the way, which I have a question as to why you would post this at midnight, to come on here and talk to me, and to defend himself. He also made a comment, which I'll show you guys if you guys want to see it. Let's see. Here it is. Let me just zoom into it real quick here. And let me see if I can show it to you on the OBS. Let me just see if I can get it on top. By making the display capture.
Can you do a screen share on
there it is. There it is.
Discord?
No, I'll send you the clip. I'm going to read it out loud, so I'm going to show you guys real quick. I'll listen to constructive... Let me see if I can move this over a little bit. There we go. I'll listen to constructive criticism. Unproductive hostility, not so much. The irony is, I doubt they do it in person. Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, well, there was 3 at the beginning. Now there's 2, but there's going to be 2 until this whole thing's over. He's still got plenty of time. We're probably going to be still doing this by the time Steve's talking to him.
Well, I would have been fine with him. He requested to talk to me, and then he asked me to broker between him and Reds. I brokered to him and Reds, and now he refuses to come here because he thinks Reds was too hostile because he called this situation piss poor. Reds offered constructive criticism, harsh criticism, nothing mean, nothing cruel. He offered harsh criticism, but he would be that the caveat being that Jim would not be able to rage quit. Jim made the caveat saying that, okay, but I want things to remain amicable. Things being amicable requires you being amicable to begin with. You lost that with the way you've behaved here. You have been inamicable towards Steve and towards anybody else involved. You ignored Boole. You ignore me and Reds also, who have been involved in this entire thing the whole time. Even just on the sole thing of saying that nobody else should be involved but Kyle and Steve. Which is not the case. That is just straight up not the case. Factually not the case. I'm totally fine for Jim to come in here and justify or come in here and explain himself, but this is not... He said as long as it is... He's fine to take constructive criticism, but he doesn't want unproductive hostility. Excuse me. I'm dying, no. Unproductive hostility is not the same as productive hostility. The only person who gets to decide whether or not you find something productive is you. You not listening to constructive criticism is unproductive. But that was a decision made by you, not the person giving the criticism. And I'm going to go ahead and say you misrepresented anybody who responds to you in this. You misrepresented Reds and me and Steve, and we'll get to that because you name us specifically. And you say we wouldn't do it in person, or at least imply it. And yet here we are, offering you for you to have been a part of this the entire time.
I really would have loved for him to be here. I like asking people questions in person, and I mean, I give everybody the benefit of the doubt, so he could have just rolled over me with any excuse, I think. I mean, he can still do it. It's his chance. All he has to do is come in and say, you know what, I didn't do any research. I asked him if he wanted to do an interview. He said, okay, 5 minutes. And I was like, oh, crap. And so I just threw that together, and that's what came out. And I still wanted to post it. And I'd be like, you know what, that's not a great excuse, but I can understand it at least a little bit.
Yeah, I can also understand wanting to do this for yourself, but in this case, this was not the way to make it public. This was not the way to do it. And Jim has a very twisted, from what I can get, sense of what friendship is, has a very twisted sense of what redemption and amicability, and there's a lot of words he uses that he does not seem to have the same definition that I think the majority of us have. Redemption doesn't mean suck a dick. Redemption doesn't mean bend over backwards to a thief to let them do whatever they want. For memes. And amicability doesn't mean that, especially for somebody who's not your friend. I don't know Jim. I've talked to Jim a couple of times. I'm not friends with Jim. I'm friendly with Jim. He's refused to come here and has misrepresented me directly with this interview as well as with his comment section. And his refusal to come here and with his responses in this live chat here. So no, you have not been friendly or amicable with me, so why do you think you get to make demands when you're requesting to go onto somebody else's channel, particularly with Reds? Specifically because Red's rhetoric deals with people who dip out and run away from proper criticism all the fucking time. So him trying to guarantee that you're not going to run away should not be seen as a hostile move. Harsh criticism isn't necessarily hostile. Us saying, Jim, what the fuck were you doing, is not hostile. But you're the one who says you have alligator skin. You're the one who says that you're commandment number 3. But tell you what, we've been live for 2.5 hours. We will do this in a part 2 perhaps later tonight if you're interested.
I'm interested.
And so we are at the 45-minute out of 1 hour and 30-minute mark. We will take a break here. We'll see what Jim has to say so far over on Steve's channel. We can take a break between the two of us because I know my throat's starting to get a little tired from ranting for so long.
And my ears are getting tired from listening to it.
Yeah, oh.
No, I'm kidding.
No, that's totally fair. I get that. And we'll come back. Bool was never mentioned. What about Bool? And I think if I want any question answered by Jim, Steve, I'll ask you. Tell you what, I've got one question that I will ask you to ask Jim. What about Bool? And what is your responsibility in this situation that he claimed to have? And on top of it, what should we do with, what redemption do you think is amicable for Kyle, towards the non-sequitur fans, towards Bool, and towards Steve? And what is amicable as redemption for Jim and his handling of this situation in what he needs to do to redeem himself to Bool, to the fans, and to you? Those are my final thoughts and questions for Jim for when he goes onto your channel.
And I have definitely asked him what he plans to do better next time. Because I want him to understand that he did make mistakes in this interview. And if he can actually point out those mistakes, I'd feel a lot better. But I'm going to force my hopes up. I'm going to force them up.
I believe. We believe in you, Jim. You can do it.
You can do it. You can learn.
We believe in you. We're not going to hold this horrid mistake over your head forever. We're not the people you seem to imply or think we are. But we will wrap it there for now. And we will see you. I'll probably be in the chat. Maybe I'll get invited in to actually ask some of these questions if, we'll see what Jim thinks, if he actually wants to talk to me directly or if he just wants to talk at me, unlike what I was willing to offer to him. So, we'll see if he's a hypocrite based on his own commandments, but hopefully not. And, hey, he asked to come on me for an interview to defend himself, and I was fine with that, but as soon as the opportunity arrived, he backed out. So we'll see. And we'll see you guys over on Steve. You doing this on? I'm assuming Steve is doing this on his channel. So we'll see you guys over on Steve's channel. It's just a day of streams, and then maybe either after that I'll go live again to talk about the rest of this. And Mr. Serious, if you're available, we will bring you on as well to talk about the rest of this, and then also talk about Jim's response and his conversation with Jim, because I would be remiss if I did not finish off what we were talking about with the context of what some of his answers are to some of our questions so far. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye now.
All right, see you guys. Later's a night.